The strangest thing a doctor has ever said to a patient. I'm still shook. I was having a couple of moles removed from my back. While laying on my stomach, my doctor asks, "Do you like to fish?" I told him I do, and he told me that I could take my moles home if I wanted, because they make excellent bait. Weird thing to say, but still to this day, he was the best doctor my husband and I ever had. My urologist crashed his custom e-bike on the way to my vasectomy, so he was a bit banged up, and then he spent the entire procedure, like all 12 minutes of it, nerding out over his custom e-bikes. "What a cooperative cervix," he said during a pap smear. "Ha! Mine said, 'You've got a great-looking cervix. Want to see? I'll get a mirror.' I told him, 'You can just get your sample and get out.'" I struggled with weight as a kid, and I went to my yearly checkup, which typically happened in the summer, so I wore shorts. My doctor put her hand on my leg and said, "You're gonna have to cut down on the cookies if you want to keep wearing these shorts." Ha! I still think about that to this day. Very similar. My doctor walked in, poked my stomach with his finger, and said, "Piggy, piggy." I was 36 years old at the time. When I first moved to America, I had a physical, and I was a little bit chubby. The severely obese doctor doing the physical told me I really needed to lose weight immediately and start working out every day. Being a little kid with no filter and a tenuous grasp of English, I motioned to him and said, "But you're fat." His response was that he's running every day and working on it, while blushing like crazy. The doctor said, "Have you taken an SSRI before?" I said, "Zoloft." I was weaned off it very quickly because it made me want to end myself even more than I'd thought about before. So he said, "Here's the script for sertraline. Fast forward to a couple of weeks. How's it going for you?" I feel worse than before, a lot like when I was prescribed Zoloft. Honestly, I've had to talk myself down multiple times. It can take time before it starts working. Just stick with it and check back in 3 months. I then did what I should have done earlier, a minimal amount of research to see that sertraline is a generic for Zoloft. I weaned myself off and have yet to go back to that doctor. Haha! Are you sure you've never given birth? Why yes, doctor, I'm very sure. I think I'd remember that. Are you totally sure? Should we search the house for kids just to be hundo%? I don't know how we'll beat that, but these docs all seem pretty dumb, so I won't put my money on it. When I was pregnant, I had my first ever yeast infection. My friend brought me to the hospital because I was complaining about all of the moisture in my undies, and she thought that my water had broken because I was a very high-risk pregnancy. The doctors got my legs up on the stirrups, takes one look at my downstairs and goes, "Ew!" And she then left the room, or so I thought, and I said to my friend, "Oh my god, did she just say ew? That's so embarrassing." But no, the doctor hadn't left the room. She'd simply gone behind the curtain and then come back and said, "I'm sorry, I did say that out loud. I have a problem with that and I've been getting in trouble." I don't generally laugh at embarrassment, but that is genuinely funny because she owned up for how awkward it was. Your knees look like they're from 2 different bodies. Sir, please let go of your Johnson. I was getting an exam for testicular cancer and holding my member out of the way. Probably the most mortifying moment of my life. Well, at least you didn't have to say it to him. After I had my appendix out as a 39-year-old female, I went in for my 6 weeks post-op. I was still having abdominal pain, but that seemed normal. He said, "You're fine." Turned to my husband and said, "Don't let her say she can't do the deed if you want to do it." We were both floored. It was 2024. My husband said, I don't force myself on my wife." It was so surreal. Screw doctors like this. During a pap, a male doctor had his fingers inserted in my downstairs and told me, "Oh, you're so tight. I can tell you've never been pregnant." I have been actually. And he said I'm still good as new. I was so shocked I didn't process it until years later. Of course, I never went back to him again. Another time, a doctor told my husband not to get a vasectomy because he'll change his mind and want kids with his next, younger wife in front of me. Holy crap, my husband was so angry. It wasn't until we got back to the car that he had a retort because we were both too appalled in the moment. F these kinds of doctors, man. Was at a children's hospital to see a specialist because I have pectus excavatum, my breastbone grows inwards, and I remember the doctor saying that some women like having the condition because it makes their chests look bigger. I was 12, and I'm pretty sure my dad was right there with me now that I think about it. I live in Japan. After catching the flu and not eating anything for almost a week, the doctor told me that my cholesterol level was too low and suggested I eat junk food to get it back up. I told him I was going back to the States in a few weeks, and he gave me a thumbs up and said, "Great! I had low cholesterol once upon a time and they were like, It's low. I wasn't expecting it to be this low. My dad has a high cholesterol, so I need to be careful. I don't know if it was a compliment or an insult, if I'm honest. I was told that I have a very memorable cervix. I think it was a compliment. I'm going to take it as one anyway. My other favourite was when the doctor stitching up my child paused to ask if I was okay, because they would rather I didn't faint, and I had to explain that I'm just pale because sunlight gives me a rash half the time. He's got cute legs, just like his mum. My doctor said this about my baby. He'd only ever seen my legs while in stirrups. On a follow-up for an intrauterine device, or IUD placement, the OB-GYN walked into the exam room and without looking at me, nor greeting me, looked my husband square in the face and asked, "How's that new IUD working out for you?" "Wait, you got malaria? Cool! What was it like?" For context, he had prescribed an anti-malaria pill and I fell into the small percentage of people it doesn't work for. My mum had a similar experience. She fell ill a few days after coming home from vacation to Brazil and was diagnosed with malaria. Every doctor and nurse in her small-town hospital, in the Midwestern US, came by to see her because they'd never seen a case of malaria in person before. She was offered an opportunity to see her blood slides. Apparently, they were fascinating. "Oh, come on, it's not the end of the world," he said after telling me I had cancer. "Just the end of my world, I guess." It wasn't so much the words themselves, but what followed after. He was one of my OB-GYN. He asked, "Are you squeamish?" "No, not at all." "Why?" And he stabs me with a Q-tip in my C-section incision, causing trapped fluids to erupt like a volcano. Yeah. He also told my sister he had read a book on C-sections during a layover at the airport right before taking her into surgery. That guy was a menace, but at least he was the fun kind. Over the years, he gave me several funny and fond memories. Has anyone remarked on your forehead wrinkle?" "No, it's... Oh, that's a sign," and he proceeds to whip out a protractor. And that's how I got provisionally diagnosed with Ehlers-Danlos. I'm going back for a follow-up soon. I wasn't even at the doctor's office. I was checking in a young male dog for a procedure. The owners, a husband and wife duo, were asking me a lot of questions about everything, which I always enjoy. At one point, discussing keeping the surgical site clean, I mentioned that I'd flush out the prepuce really well beforehand because all of that smegma would be a real pain otherwise. The male owner's face lit up as he enthusiastically agreed. "Boy, do I ever know what you mean." I just nodded and smiled. "Okay, well, I'd better be going," grabbed the dog and backed out of the room. Just as I was shutting the door behind me, the guy's wife yelled after me, "He's a urologist!" And I really tried to be professional, you guys, but they absolutely heard me helplessly laughing until breathless on the other side of the exam room door. While trying to prescribe me for some medicine because my potassium was low, I asked, "Can't I just eat more bananas?" And he said, "Well, you'd have to eat 2.5 feet of bananas a day." First, that is doable, and two, that is not how you measure bananas. He told me how he likes to have his nips pinched during his bedroom fun times and to throttle his partner. So I have a new doctor now. "Why is your hair graying? You're too young." "Oh, you seem like you lost some weight since the last time I saw you. You're too skinny now. Why are you taking antidepressants?" "I saw you in my dream." These all came from the same doctor. Wild that you can be in a profession that educates you within an inch of your life, grades you on your bedside manner and people skills, puts you in contact with people every day, and yet still not have any idea of social cues whatsoever. "I shared a picture of your kidney at a conference recently." I mean, isn't it every girl's dream to have her kidney shared at an endourology conference? I have a very rare anatomical structure called a calyceal diverticulum, which is a pouch in my kidney that forms kidney stones. The stones can get stuck twice, and we managed to get a picture of how my first stone got stuck right in the opening of the pouch, because I visited the ER in extreme pain 3 times. It was apparently a real money shot, and my endourologist is going to use it to educate students. He definitely wants to help me, but he can also barely contain his glee at my case. My friend has a rare genetic issue that affects her kidneys. All her siblings, except one, have it too, but she is the worst affected. Their nephrologist was straight up giddy when she figured out what it was. She treats the whole family and basically studies all of the siblings since they have such an extreme range of the issue, from only slightly affected all the way to hospitalized multiple times a year to handle it. It has let them figure out that pregnancy with the condition is a terrible idea when her least affected sister finally got diagnosed due to her unborn baby triggering the symptoms in her. My friend was never really interested in having kids, thankfully, because she's the worst affected and a pregnancy could kill her. They also figured out some of the most efficient ways to temporarily treat the issue, so if anyone else is born with an even more severe form, there's hope for them. I'm still keeping my kidneys nice and healthy for her, just in case though.
You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. Don't forget to subscribe to Am I the Genius?
He told me that I couldn't possibly be sure that my husband was my baby's father. I did know for sure, as I'd never done the deed with anyone but my husband. A surgeon said to me, "Well, I make my living cutting people up, but I'm not recommending that you let me do it to you just so that I can pay off my Porsche." "Honestly, that's a good doctor," says the lawyer who says the same thing to clients when I think they should settle early, in cases of insurance or municipal defense, so I don't get a cut of anything when they settle early. Had a brain cancer diagnosis last year, had to get a big hunk of my brain removed to get the tumor. Surgeon said before the surgery, "You know, a lot of people when this is over get to live a good long life, like another 30 years. I'm in my early 30s, meaning I get the privilege of maybe making it to 60. He was actually a great surgeon, if not one of the absolute best at what he does, but I don't think he registered my age compared to his usual spiel. I find it funny, but I was like, oh, great. Not a traditional doctor, but the first time I saw this psychiatrist, I talked to him about 15 minutes. Nothing at all about anything traumatic, because I didn't have anything like that in my past. I have a psych degree, so I had some insights about some of the stuff going on. He's like, "I mean, that's possible, but you probably have some repressed bedroom trauma." No, I don't. That he would even suggest that after 15 minutes, I mean, yikes. I'm so glad I didn't believe him. I never saw him again. I suddenly started getting optical migraines, which my doctor apparently had in med school as well. He said when he'd get one, he'd grab a plain black coffee and smoke a cigarette. Apparently caffeine and nicotine do something to blood vessels, I don't know. He wasn't a smoker, but he kept a pack in his bag just for that. His and mine went away as suddenly as they started. I thought it was funny that he suggested those things. My hematologist came into my hospital room at 5 a.m. as I was sleeping and started whispering in my ear, "I told you to go to the hospital, remember?" He did, in fact, not tell me to go to the hospital. He denied me a CT scan when I had several large pulmonary embolisms and required a week hospitalization. I reported him to the hospital. It was a whole thing, and I never saw him again. Not weird, but when Diet Coke started using aspartame, it originally used saccharine for a year or two, I asked my doctor if aspartame was safe in his opinion. He said he didn't know. However, after another 30 years, we might all find out if we all get bladder cancer. 30 years later, I got bladder cancer. I had gallstones, but eating made me feel better instead of making me feel sick like it does for most people. So when the ER finally brought in a gastroenterologist to see me, she didn't think that was what was wrong with me and started examining me. Then she poked my gallbladder and was like, "Wow, it flinched." And yes, I could feel it flinching. And yes, it was every bit as gross as you can imagine. Then the surgeon got the resident surgeon in and had her start poking it too, for educational purposes, I guess. And the resident started marveling over it as well. They were taking turns poking my gallbladder and making it jump around until I was just like, "Hey, you're not in medical school anymore and I'm not a cadaver, stop doing that." Gotta wonder how much fun they had catching the damn thing when they took it out a few hours later. I once had a doctor use body fat calipers on me and tell me I was morbidly obese. Except I was sitting down, you're supposed to use them standing up, I was 5'8" and 120 pounds, and also only 12 years old. And I had another doctor who literally told me he thought I had a stroke, and made me get an MRI just because I told him I had anxiety and sometimes disassociated. The neurologist I went to literally looked at his notes and started laughing because it was such a dumb recommendation. My optometrist at the time shut the door when he found out I was Jewish and turned off the lights to show me pictures on his computer of Mormon temples and told me we are kin because Jews and Mormons are the same. He had me in there alone with him for ages. It was so creepy, I never saw him again. He ended up leaving my town shortly after. I had a dentist tell me he was more concerned about my salvation than my oral health while he was doing a procedure. Then he proceeded to preach at me the entire hour he had sharp tools in my mouth and no way to leave. Oh boy, that's the medical version of that scene in Mississippi Burning where Gene Hackman interrogates a guy while shaving him with a straight razor. Absolutely harrowing, no thank you. I probably shouldn't be hitting on you. No, No, you shouldn't. Right after he broke HIPAA as well. I had a psychiatrist tell me I was cute when I was angry, and that's why no one takes me seriously. Second gyno exam ever, first and last with this particular doctor. They said, "Oops, sorry about that," after sticking his finger in my butt without any warning. I felt pretty awful for the rest of the day after that exam, as you can imagine. "You should probably get a job or a hobby. You've got too much time to think about yourself," they said while poking at the thrush on my tonsil. I'd already found out that I had cancer, but at the second consultation, the care team leader oncologist proclaimed, "We're going to fix this so something else kills you." Well, they did, at least so far. "You have tonsillitis," they said 10 years after they'd been removed. Worried about my hormones potentially being out of whack at my first time with a gynecologist. You just need to get some sausage. I should mention it was a female doctor, and I did not go back. I was a student's first ever pap smear, and after I was dressed, he put his hand on my shoulder, looked me in the eyes and said, "Thank you," with more sincerity than I've ever heard from anyone before or since. I asked my doctor for assistance for my ED. He laughed at me for a minute and asked, "What do you need that for?" "Yeah, I don't have that doctor anymore." "Oh, you've put on so much weight since the last time. I was going to ask you to open wide and say oink." "Why are you crying?" While explaining that my birth control implant was making me have the worst mood swings I've ever had. I wasn't sleeping, had splitting headaches and local pain at the insertion site. I don't know. Probably because this sucks, and the lack of empathy was not helping. I was 24 and dealing with a headache that lasted 8 months and 3 or 4 times per week would turn into a full-blown migraine with auras, numbness, loss of speech. You could see and feel veins on the side of my head throbbing 24/7. My doctor basically treated me like I was over-exaggerating, even though I was coming into her office every 2 weeks crying and ready to die. Every 2 weeks, she'd basically just tell me to cut something out of my diet and then come back again. The third or so time I was in her office and she said, "Stop drinking coffee for 2 weeks and come back." I said, "I don't drink coffee." She replied, "Okay, try drinking coffee for 2 weeks and come back then." My boyfriend at the time had to stop me from leaping over the table at her. If this is an improvement from normal life, then you just get used to it. I was bleeding for over 2 years from a failed implanon. High bone density. I've always struggled with my weight, mainly due to very bad habits that my dad had with me. But I always played sports. I did karate, basketball, and volleyball in high school until I messed up my knee. Turns out I have really dense bones. If I remember correctly, the high end of the test went up to 10, and I tested 11.5 or so on the scale. So that explained why I didn't break what should have been broken when I messed up my knee. It did cause cartilage damage, which they repaired 15 years later. But it also meant that I couldn't realistically weigh what I should, so the doctor sent me to physical therapy because you're a truck trying to run on a Fiat 500 engine. I had a colonoscopy in my mid-60s. Afterwards, the doctor told me I had a young colon. I was so proud. I'm not sure how to say this to you. We've talked about it after every physical for over 4 years. You're really fat. Not to me, but to my husband, newly diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. He went back to our primary doctor with the news, who said to him, "So, did they tell you when you're going to die?" Realizing he hadn't been very tactful, the doctor's face went white, and the remainder of the appointment was very awkward. That was 4 years ago, and my husband has been cancer-free for the last 3 years. Last week, the doctor came in before I went under for my first colonoscopy, and he said, "We'll put you under and I'll ram it in and you'll be through in no time." And I asked, "Ram?" When I went to renew my birth control pills at the ripe old age of 35, I was promptly told, "Well, you may as well have it all taken out if you're not going to use it." Presumably, they meant my womb. "Your child doesn't have a soul, just lock him up," the doctor told my mum in the 90s. My brother is on the spectrum. I was 13 and having really bad back pain. Went to an ortho and I had a back x-ray. The doctor looked at it and the first thing he said was, "You have the perfect birthing canal." My mum and I were like, what the frick? I'm 27 now and I've had 3 kids the normal way with no issues, and the first OB checked me during very early pregnancy and said I have the perfect shaped pelvis for a birth, so I guess he wasn't wrong. Still a very weird thing to say. "Well, you're full of crap. Literally, look here." And he showed me my CT scan. Diverticulitis is a real B word, kids. Eat your fiber.
10 years later. When did this part of our old lives disappear? The good old $800 beta car that would actually run and drive. Good luck finding anything nowadays that'll run and drive for less than $3,000. And cars that ordinary people could repair. Online spaces for kids. When I was a child, we had several online places made for children. Every single children's TV channel had a website with games for kids, and there were several online games geared towards children, like Club Penguin, etc. Now, if you're a 10-year-old, you either rot your brain with crappy YouTube videos, or you rot your brain with social media. The convenience and accessibility promised by the internet of the 2000s and 2010s that's gradually being taken away from us. I bought a season of a show on Amazon a few years back, and they seemed to have somehow lost the rights to the original, so now I can only access the dubbed version, which I don't like. The show is now only available on a streaming service that doesn't exist in my country. So I got a VPN only to find out that I can't frickin' pay for the streaming service without a credit card. So now I just ordered a box set again like I would have done 15 years ago. And it's not just the streamers. I remember when website loading times were the topic when talking about browsers. But now every website you open requires you to take 2 minutes to close 5 legal questions and pop up "Do you want to register?" horse crap, with the X's hidden in different spots every time. There are ads everywhere, and even if you buy the premium version of things, there are still more ads within the content, all for crap you'd never buy. Places like YouTube remove functioning like and dislike features, so you can't tell what videos you can simply skip or which ones are good. All new security measures that they introduce just to steal your time and life energy. You want to log into Netflix on your PC, but you can't because it needs to be registered as a temporary device. They send you an email, but to open the email you first need to enter a code, which they send to your phone, which is in the other room, so you go and get it, and once you've entered the code and opened Netflix, you forgot what the frick you even wanted to watch in the first place. And don't get me started on all the frickin' updates everything seemingly needs to do every other week. Google also seems to be less efficient than it was 8 years ago, and finding anything online has become a chore. I mean, this one is huge. 10 years ago I was blown away by how good Google was. Anything I wanted to learn about was instantly found for me. Now it's all AI slop, and there's clear proof that the decrease in quality is partially caused by Google themselves, serving worse results to get you to try another query and see more ads. Yep, I have multiple cases of searching the exact name of the website or product that I want, and instead of seeing it at the top of the results, I'll get the big brand alternatives first, the ones who paid Google more to be at the top of the search, and I have to scroll down to find the thing that most exactly matches the wording of my search. It's absolute bullcrap. Isn't it weird that 10 years ago means 2015 and not 2010 or 2005? Shut up. 10 years ago is 1990. So you shut your mouth. Quality clothing and furniture. Everything's MDF and polyester, even at the better stores. I live in an area where people will put things that are still usable on the curb, and I've been rescuing solid wood furniture where I can for years now. I've got an antique china cabinet, a small drop-leaf table, dining room chairs, curio shelves, and a plant stand that way. Oak, maple, cherry, mahogany, pine. I don't think people know what they have, or they're just more interested in modern-looking things. It's their loss. With a little cleaning, a bit of wood glue, and sometimes a refinishing, I end up with beautiful pieces that will probably outlive me. And I also get to learn new skills. I rescued an oak chair last week that needs a little love, and I might finally undertake learning some basic reupholstery skills. The seat has a leather pad, but the leather is brown, and it would look better with black, I think. I also rescue wood that I can reuse to build new things. Wobbly bookshelf? I'll take it apart and build shelves that fit my space. Leaves from a dining room table? Take them home, clean them up, and reuse them. As long as it's solid wood and not particle board, chipboard, or any other kind of crappy pressboard, I'll make it useful again. How about reasonable fast food prices? Or for that matter, fast food? Coins on the sidewalk. Mid-career jobs. We call this the Great Flattening. Also, early career jobs. Now everyone wants seniors and juniors, but with the pay of an entry-level job. Small independent hardware stores. They used to be a small-town staple, especially in the Midwest. Almost every one used to be the oldest business in town, having been open since like 1895. Now they're all mostly gone, and your only alternative is a big box hardware store or ordering on Amazon. It's incredibly depressing. A real live person answering a business telephone. And if you don't believe me, press 5 to repeat this message. Alternatively, a customer service call that doesn't take 5 minutes to tell you you can reach them on their website instead. Motherfricker, I'm a millennial. Do you think I'd be calling if I had any other choice? Really owning anything. You're paying to borrow these days. Toys and cereal boxes. The devolving of toys and cereal makes me so sad. My children don't get to experience it. I remember the toy was on the top outside of the bag, but then these jerks would open the box and just take them. Then they put it on the bottom under the bag, but they'd take that too. Then the toy was wrapped in plastic and put somewhere in the actual cereal bag, and then, finally, no toys. I remember color-changing spoons and the monkey-linking toys from the Jungle Book. Those were my faves. Same with Cracker Jacks. They used to have actual toys. Now it's a bit of printed paper. If you're lucky, it's maybe a sticker. My grandma had a jar of trinkets, half of which were old Cracker Jack prizes. I loved sifting through all the cool stuff in there as a kid. 24-hour businesses. COVID killed them, and it seems like a lot of them aren't coming back. I loved walking around Walmart at 2 a.m. The Walmartians were out in full force back then. Small phones. Remember the pre-smartphone era when manufacturers raced to make phones smaller and smaller? Then the iPhone was launched and everyone thought it was too big at the time. But now even that looks tiny. Now, even cheap smartphones are huge, like mini tablets that barely fit into pockets. Reminds me a bit of the Futurama bit in the early 2000s or 3000s. What happened? Did you swallow your phone again? Fireflies. Well, it's still possible. Pile your leaves up and just leave them. Fireflies lay their eggs in leaf litter, and when we bag up leaves and trash them, we're trashing future fireflies too. I don't pick up leaf litter on my property, and I have a decent amount of fireflies every summer. While I'm here, popping in to say that everyone should look up plants native to their area and spread those around as much as possible. Your specific area will have a certain biodiversity dedicated to its ecoregion, and there's more than likely a non-profit close to you that will provide information on naturalizing your yard. In the least sarcastic sense possible, critical thinking and self-reflection. It's really a struggle to engage with people these days who aren't capable of putting their bias and personal beliefs aside to think big picture or critically about any issue. People jump straight to personal insults, fallacies, and needing to feed their ego. It's so hard to be a teacher right now. They literally wait for the answer. In an open book test the other day, I had a complaint that there wasn't a page number. There were only about 6 it could have been on. They just didn't want to look. I'd say being able to see shades of grey. I see a lot of black and white thinking now. Lots of absolutism, which to me reads as a lack of common sense in a lot of ways. It often comes out as someone giving a general piece of advice, say, don't eat yellow snow, upon which someone will inevitably mention that they happen to live next door to the factory that produces the lemon extract flavoring stuff, and sometimes the snow in the area becomes yellow, but it's because it's lemon-flavored snow and it's delicious. So obviously, the advice not to eat yellow snow is completely always invalid in all situations, and the person who offered that piece of advice is both wrong and dumb, and nobody should ever listen to them. It's like people are becoming more and more unable to understand that generalities assume you have common sense enough to realize that exceptions are in fact exceptional, and that exceptions don't invalidate the generality. Just because you happen to live in the one place in the known universe where yellow snow is actually lemonade snow, it doesn't mean that for the vast majority of the planet, don't eat yellow snow isn't a valid, good guideline to follow. And no, I don't know that there's any place with lemonade snow, but if there is, there's probably a Redditor there who thinks anyone who avoids yellow snow is stupid and discriminating against them somehow. Skype. It's amazing, really, that the provider of video calls disappeared during Corona. My hair. Rest in peace, both for you and on behalf of all of us men over 30. I don't know how well it applies to the ladies of the same age period. God, I wish I could tell my baby self to treasure that beautiful mullet while he could. Ownership. These days, you pay a subscription. You can't fix what you own because it's proprietary. You can't buy outright. Our ownership of things has become a rental service where they can break or completely remove what we've purchased without consent at any time, because it was in the terms of service. I hate how everything is turning into a billboard now too. Oh, you've owned your TV for 2 years now? Well, we just ran an update to show you commercials during the screensaver mode. Oh, you want no ads? Well, you're gonna need to pay more for that. Loud as frick video ads on gas pumps, ads on apps that you've used for many years that didn't have them before, but now all of a sudden they need them for revenue. More and more ads before movies. I kept setting my Alexa Echo show to not show ads. I literally wanted the show versus another dot because I wanted the clock that normally displays. Now, most of the time when I look at it, it's not the clock, it's ads. Every time I fix the settings, they must send an update or something because then ads start to show up again. Leave me the frick alone in my own home. And I think it's probably going to lead to me getting rid of the Echo Show. It's utter BS. I wanted to finally get myself a Kindle last year. Now, those have ads. You have to pay extra to not have ads on the frickin' device you buy and own to read a frickin' book. I feel almost paranoid these days. Like, I've got a stalker and I just don't know where they'll spring up next, and their intentions really aren't good. I'm getting really frickin' sick of it. I'm already stressed out enough as it is. But now I just feel surrounded and like I'm being hounded by so many ads trying to get me to part with what little money I do have. Honestly, I think the constant ads are lowering at least my quality of life. I feel more and more like the regular working class is being treated like a herd of cattle and not real people. Oh, and how could I forget to mention websites with ads? Just about every single website is so packed with ads that they render the site almost unusable. Ads popping up while reading the news, websites needing to reload repeatedly because of some glitching ad error, ads taking up so much screen space that you can only read a few lines of whatever you're reading at a time, X buttons to close the ad windows that are so tiny you risk hitting the ad itself, redirecting you to a new site. I swear there's got to also be a way that some apps and sites dial up the ad sensitivity to touch to 1000. You just brush that ad with your finger while you scroll and boom, it opens up. It really makes being online such an obnoxious experience anymore, or using apps a chore. I've been getting more and more avoidant of being online, which I guess isn't a bad thing overall, but still, the internet used to be a pretty fun place to be. And then there's the ads that are sponsored content on Google results or Amazon results. Amazon is obnoxious because these sponsored products just keep showing up on repeat as you scroll through products. It's like they pop up after 5 actual search results over and over and over. And in Facebook Marketplace, ads that lead to other websites are getting harder to detect from actual things individual people are selling. Reddit has gotten bad about making ads look like they're actual posts or comments. Has anyone else noticed the recent-ish addition of ads disguised as comments? That's just mixed into the regular comments rather than being the first pinned comment. It's sneaky as frick. I'm going along reading comments, tapping the top of the comments to shrink them when I'm done reading it, and then I accidentally hit the top of an ad comment, and instead of shrinking, like normal comments do, it takes you to a different web page. I know that this was 100% their intent too, to trick a person closing up comments as they read them into hitting the ad. It's so sneaky and just so gross. I guess ads must still work on a lot of people or they wouldn't be pushing them out so much anymore. Who are these people who are just driving more ads by responding to them by buying products so much so that ads just continue to litter every aspect of the world around us all the time? Or maybe the problem is that ads aren't working as well as they used to be to drive up sales, and that's why they're finding new ways to force us to view these ads. Okay, sorry, I just needed to let it all out. Anyway, this post is sponsored by… You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. Don't forget to subscribe to Am I the Genius? The general decline of public services. It's become normalized for public health, schools, council-run services and stuff to all be worse. Teachers, nurses, fire services are all at breaking point and more cuts are being announced. All because we can't afford it. Look, somebody's making the money and it certainly isn't the working class. People answering phone calls. Home phones for that matter. The ability to read and comprehend something longer than a paragraph. I'm an English teacher and this is a serious problem. I've got several students who do badly at reading comprehensions because article-sized texts are apparently too long. And these aren't lazy kids either. Some of them are very good at other aspects of their work, and they all speak like 3 languages. But by their own admission, they just don't read. I don't mean they don't read books, I mean they don't even read magazine articles or newspapers or websites. They literally just read Instagram comments and the like. This is going to have serious consequences later on in life when they go into higher education and they can't study, or they try to get an office job that requires that they read reports or anything longer than a short email. Online reviews that you can trust. Everything is rated from a 4.5 to a 4.75 out of 5 now. Childhood. As a parent, I feel like I'm fighting an uphill battle by keeping our kids screen-free. Kids need to be taught how to play, how to interact with other humans. They don't even go out to play with friends anymore. It's all online. A year ago, I noticed a big group of kids playing manhunt on their bicycles, and I was pleasantly surprised when another kid came up to me a minute later to ask if I saw his friends ride by. Another pedestrian saw the whole thing and said, Wait, did that really just happen? You never see that anymore. Ownership. Everything is rented, leased, or subscription-based these days. First-hand knowledge of the Roaring Twenties and Great Depression. I don't know about you, but my depression is pretty great. Fun and hobbies. Everything's a side hustle or has developed an ultra-competitive or pro scene that's so overly intimidating that it just ruins the entire thing every time. If you're not the best, you're worthless. GG, nub. Nobody wants to play with you. Nah, bro, you're the one ruining it. Cringe much? Physical checks as payment. I see less and less of those in my business. Cash was on its way out as well, but we've seen an increase in that, actually. Alright, as a Brit who spells check CHEQUE, when you wrote CHECKS, physical checks as payments, that looked like a horrifying sentence. I live in Japan. Most of the stuff mentioned here is still alive and well in Japan. That's because Japan has been stuck in the year 2000 since the 80s. Every time I go, even the first time, it feels nostalgic. Definitely a vibe reminiscent of pre-September 11th America. For one thing, the news cycle isn't dark and doom-filled. You can still rent physical media, and there's still major CD and DVD chains like HMV and Tower Records. Arcades are everywhere. I'm sure we could ruin that too if enough of us focus our efforts there. In seriousness, a lot of people in my circle and with my particular hobbies love going to Japan. Probably exactly for this reason. I'm sure there are downsides, but it sounds like a breath of fresh air. Insects are vanishing at a rapid rate. So much so that it's one of the biggest extinction events in recent history. Yet nobody is paying attention. 3D TVs and curved TVs. It's a cycle. 3D will be back regular as clockwork in about 10 to 15 years. There have been tons of grammatical shifts as texting has become prioritized. Nobody uses semicolons anymore. Magazines. Well, how about magazines in waiting rooms? What are people doing in those? Maternity stores. Even the selection within stores like Target has gotten smaller. Oh my god, this. I've been watching keenly over the past couple of years as the selection in my local Meijer has steadily shrunk. It's not just some things either, it's all of them. It's insane and almost nobody is talking about it. The ability to read a physical map. The books and magazines section at the grocery store. Shame! I blame reality TV. Family dysfunction was kept behind closed doors. We used to lock away and shun people who behaved like fools in public. Then Jerry Springer came along and turned it into a television spectacle. At some point somebody said, F the host, F the studio audience, and F the stage. Let's just put the camera in their house. Now social media is just reality TV with a camera in everyone's house. The public good. For example, the bandwidth that analog TV broadcasts occupied was once a public good. The public owned that bandwidth. Digital broadcast bandwidth takes up a ton less bandwidth. After the switch to digital, the analog bandwidth remaining was sold off to cell phone providers. You now pay for access to bandwidth you once owned. Bugs. It honestly freaks me out when I realize that I never have to clean bugs off my windshield now. I see some insects on occasion, but I think back to my childhood and I remember the swarms around streetlights and needing to use bug spray whenever we went hiking. That's just a thing of the past now. It's probably the canary in the coal mine, too. Oh, here's a good one. Clowns. Quick backstory, I did social work for a bit and my guy liked clowns a lot. We'd try to find clown-related stuff and it was impossible. Clowns in the traditional sense, children's entertainers, have been pretty much completely phased out of American culture now. Not creepy Pennywise or art ones, they're still around. There are more clown characters in TV shows, advertising or movies or parks. You just pretty much won't find clowns entertaining children's parties or charities. Think about how prevalent they were before the 2010s. Ronald McDonald was one of the biggest mascots on the planet, and he's not their spokesperson anymore. Bozo was still incredibly popular. Loonette had a popular TV show. They were hired to do tricks for birthday parties. The Shriners had clown shows. After the remake of Stephen King's It and those viral creepy clown sightings, they've been completely dropped by the public. The only depiction of clowns in the media now is the killer creepy clown trope. I think about this sometimes and it legitimately bums me out. I think the general public idea that clowns are creepy was well before 2010. There's the infamous, "Can't sleep, the clown will eat me" from The Simpsons, which was in 1992. And Bozo was not still incredibly popular in the 2010s. The grand majority of the regional Bozo the Clown shows were cancelled by the mid-70s. Looks like the very last of the regular airing shows were even done in 2001. Even if you look at media depictions of party clowns throughout the 80s and 90s, they were already being portrayed in a negative light. Probably because they were boring or lame or misanthropic, like Uncle Buck in 1989. I've known a couple of clowns, and they mentioned that because kids became so uncomfortable with people that were essentially unpredictable, they focused a lot more on doing balloon art. So now they kind of play as the chill uncle with the huge mustache that can do crazy things with balloons. When normal turns to nightmare. Realizing that your friend might be a psychopath. One of my neighbors when I was little had some hamsters. One day I was at her house and she started squeezing them and making them poop because she thought that was funny. She just kept squeezing them harder and harder. I told her to stop or she might hurt them, and she started laughing. The next day I asked her grandma what had happened to her hamsters, and she told me they'd all died. Another time we were making peanut butter and jelly sandwiches in her room, I don't know why in her room, and she cornered me with the knife while laughing. I looked her up a few years ago and I found her mugshot. Go figure. Was she named Azula by any chance? I played soccer with a guy that had a real short temper and enjoyed playing the sport as rough as possible, even at practice. The coaches had to tell him to calm down all the time. Everybody hated him and stayed away from him. Several years later, he unalived a friend of mine over some green herb. He hid the body under a pile of leaves in his backyard. When I heard the news, I wasn't surprised in the least. My older sister used to absolutely torture me when I was a kid. When I was 5 or 6 and she was 7 or 8, I was afraid of bugs. She'd spend hours trapping bugs and putting them in my Matchbox cars. Then she'd say, "Hey Stephanie, you want to play cars?" I'd get super excited because she never wanted to play with me. I'd run over to my cars and there would be bugs crawling all over them. Then when I was 7, I was obsessed with Barbies. One day she grabbed my favorite Barbie and Ken and threw them under the bed. I stuck my tongue out at her and climbed under the bed to get them. As I army crawled in the cramped space, my arms started to hurt. I was getting pricked all over every time I moved. And I was bleeding. It took me until I was halfway under the bed to figure out what my psychopath sister had done. She had spent all morning weaving pushpins into the carpet so the points would stick up and prick me. She had then tricked me into climbing under the bed. So there I was, halfway in with my precious Barbie and Ken at the back wall. I had to decide whether to cut my losses and abandon Barbie and Ken, or climb the rest of the way through this Saw-esque minefield and then back out. I bit the bullet. Amy, if you read this, F you. My sister is a textbook narcissist now, but back then it was definitely oppositional defiant disorder, the childhood form of antisocial personality disorder. She hid the worst of everything from our parents. Thankfully, it wasn't long until I got bigger, stronger, and smarter than her. Then I could defend myself. I think that prevented her from becoming really psychotic. I reeled her in. These days we're in our 40s, and at best she's an occasional nuisance. Okay, well she should thank her lucky stars that you prevented her transformation into stupider female Jigsaw. That's awful, and I'm glad that you mostly have your peace from her. A few years ago, I had to put my cat, Rex, down. He was 21 years. In passing, not too long ago, I mentioned this to a friend that I'd known for over 35 years. Out of nowhere, he made the statement, "I always liked killing cats." I did a double take to see if he was kidding. He was not. I haven't spoken to him since. The crap that people say about pets to people who love them is astounding. I told a friend that I was struggling to come up with the cash for a procedure that my cat needed or he'd most likely die. I wasn't asking for help or advice, just venting. He told me he could take care of it for 50 cents, and when I asked how, he told me that was the price of a bullet. My dad said for years that somebody I knew at primary school, ages 7 through 11, was a psychopath because he often got in fights with random people and showed no empathy after breaking their bones. And he'd often lie about staff to get them in trouble. I thought he was scary and a bit violent, but an alright guy overall. Then I found out a couple of years ago he'd been sentenced to life for murder. She kicked my leg while we were ice skating once to make me fall. I really hurt my back. I couldn't get up, I could barely talk, and I had trouble breathing. I asked her to please call someone, but she just stood there and laughed at me for a few minutes until I was able to crawl to my phone and call somebody. She also said to my adopted brother that he was worth nothing because even his real parents left him in the trash. It was the only time I've ever punched someone in the face. While my ex-boss at the youth service knew she was wrong about something really serious and I had to report it because of due diligence, We work with vulnerable children and young people. So I went to her office to have an adult, grown-up conversation with her as I wanted to be straight up with her about what I was going to do. And she actually barricaded the door to her office to stop me from leaving. She had me cornered in my wheelchair, and the office was too small for me to turn around. Meanwhile, my colleagues were outside the office trying to break down the door to rescue me. I mean, what happened? Did you call the police on her? No, but I told her I'd have to call the police if she didn't let me out, though. 2 male, quite hard streetwise colleagues told her that they'd break the door down if she didn't let me out. When I saw them afterwards, they looked more scared than me. Finally, she let me out. I sent my resignation letter to her the next day without going back to work. He kicked my dog, and when I told him off, he said something along the lines of, well, it's not like its feelings matter. Another friend said, well, how would you feel if we kicked you? And he said that we couldn't do anything that would hurt him. I think he joined the military, but honestly, I've lost all contact. I was in the military for a while. There's a lot of really crappy people there. I can confidently say for a fair bit of them that if they weren't in the military, they'd be in prison instead. One of the reasons I dislike all of the all servicemen or veterans are heroes mindset is that I tell people all the time I served with plenty of idiots and complete buttholes. When I was 8, I let my older cousin, who was probably 11 or 12 at the time, hold my hamster. She was being really rough with it, so I told her to put it back into its cage. And she got real mad after that and just stared at me for about 2 minutes before she turned around and threw my hamster into the wall. My poor hamster died instantly, and I was crying because my hamster had just gotten murdered. I knew after she threw it that something was extremely wrong with her, and my mum made my aunt come and pick her up, and she wasn't allowed to be near any animals after this. It's been almost 4 years since I've talked to her, but apparently she gets into fights almost weekly, and beat someone so bad they had to go to the ER. She's in therapy and has spent time in juvenile detention. All of my other cousins are afraid of her, and many of us think she's going to eventually end somebody. I honestly think the best place for her would be a mental health hospital. When he beat up my grandma with an exercise bike. Wow, that went from 100 to 110 real quick. When I had a parent-teacher conference with a student of mine's mum and dad. This was maybe 15 years ago, but it stuck with me. The daughter had some minor issues with math, she was in the 3rd grade, and the father insisted that he was a physics professor at an Ivy League university nearby. When I told him that his daughter was struggling with the standard addition and subtraction algorithm, he got upset and told me he didn't understand what the word algorithm means. This guy was a physics professor? Okay. When I began to explain, his face got completely flat and devoid of any expression. His wife immediately noticed the look on his face. He was staring straight at me, not blinking or saying anything. So her face blanched and she started pulling on his arm and trying to get his attention. Off me, I assume. When I described it later, I called it a serial killer face. This guy eventually let his wife pull him out of the room and end the conference. I immediately told my principal and said that I refused to do another conference alone with these people. I definitely felt as though if I were alone with this man, he would have come after me physically. His wife's response was very telling. I only dealt with her from then on. When I was about 7 or 8, there was a kid who was about 6. We found a small bird that fell out of its nest. In the time it took for me to go home and tell an adult, he had put it on the road and run it over on his bike and laughed. Last I heard, he's in jail for attacking his spouse. Screw you, Kevin. Well, I'm already at the point where I feel like we've had enough internet here for one day, and we're not even halfway through this video. So this is going to be a real fun one, you guys. Oh, and I've got another one to record after this as well. Yay, 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 yay. I dislike this sort of topic so much. My period was late, and I had to let the dude know it was. It was the first time my period was ever late while on birth control pills, but I'd recently switched to a different one. He immediately started blaming me for not taking my birth control right, and that if I was pregnant, he would end me. I even told him I doubted I was pregnant, and not to worry, and that the doctor told me that this might happen. Apparently, women are most likely to be murdered when they're pregnant. When I was pregnant, I had to have a hospital appointment every fortnight, and at every meeting, they'd ask, "How is it at home? How does your partner make you feel?" and questions like that. Eventually, I asked why, and my midwife said, "I have to ask because statistically, partners are more likely to start mistreating you when you're pregnant. And statistically, it takes someone an average of 13 times of being asked before they admit that someone is mistreating them." Which hands down was one of the most heartbreaking facts to learn while pregnant. I went to high school with a guy. We weren't close, but we had a lot of mutual friends, so we were around each other a lot. Once, he beat up a guy with a tire iron when the guy tried to scam him when he was selling some Mary J or something. Later on, he went to Iraq and was in some trouble. He came home on leave at some point, and I was at a bar playing pool with him, and he nonchalantly talked about killing people over there. He said that he enjoyed it. He was always very calm and chill when I was around him, but I tried to avoid him after that. There was something broken in there. The weirdest part is that he'd have these moments or anecdotes of extreme violence, but he always related them calmly. Never felt any sort of regret for any of it. Obviously, you can't diagnose someone off of that sort of thing, but I've read that sociopaths make very good soldiers, and he was fairly successful in the army, I believe. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. Don't forget to subscribe to Am I the Genius? This guy found God 3 times in the course of a single year. Each time after he had been seen doing significant property damage or mistreating a girl he was with. It was like the God thing was a quick trick to get people off his back. I met an individual who later pled guilty to his involvement in about 14 murders. During an interview about his childhood and personal life, it became very apparent that he had no interest in other people and that they were basically NPCs to him, even his girlfriend and child. He was in a gang and his behavior was basically shadowing the other guys with status. He had a girlfriend because that's what the other guys did. He had a fancy car. He wore the right clothes. The other guys figured out early on that he wasn't bothered by murder or firefights, so he was their hit guy. During the interview, he was perfectly polite but utterly flat in his affect and didn't attempt to dissemble or minimize a lot of the terrible things that happened to him or the things he had done. It made for a very interesting interview. When my best friend asked me to find a cat and end it with her in the backyard, we broke contact after that. I heard from a mutual friend it was actually confirmed by her therapist that she was an actual sociopath a few months later. Okay, update. So a few people have pointed out that this couldn't have been confirmed by her therapist. Remember, this was the information which went through at least 2 other teenagers before it came to me. The explanation of what was wrong with her might have been oversimplified to sociopath or lost in translation along the way. Or completely fabricated for all I know, this was teens we're talking about. But that was the message I got. I'm a college librarian. He was one of my students who came in a lot. He was real charming and good-looking and altogether empty inside. No depth, no emotion, and no regard for others. One of our staff straight up said, "Oh, that guy's a psychopath." She had been a social worker, so I trusted her opinion and agreed. He collected types of women. He told me about seducing a female married military chaplain and getting her to do things that she initially didn't want to do. Then he got bored with her and moved on. He eventually got his master's degree and now works on the military base making big bucks, getting everyone else to do his work for him. Sometimes psychopaths are dangerous in other ways. I think one of my university professors was a sociopath. He was brilliant in his field, but he just didn't function correctly as a human. He set up strange rules of interaction for office hours. He had a huge personal bias on people based on things like haircuts, and there were even rumors of him being the reason for people not wanting to be alive anymore due to the way that he talked to people who failed their final exams, like the last oral exam after he failed the written one 3 times. He'd be smiling, smirking, like a small boy whose grandma had found him with the hand in the cookie jar, while telling people their years of education were wasted. What is it with crazy people and killing cats? I knew he was a psychopath when he told me he was a psychopath. I'm not even kidding. He's a pretty cool guy though and goes to therapy and everything for it. He does his best to relate to people and judge emotion, but it's difficult for him to hold relationships. Pretty smart and he's doing the best he can, hopefully one of the more light-hearted stories on here. I mean, not every psychopath is a monster. They simply have no remorse and feel very little emotions. It makes it easy to do heinous things when you don't feel bad for it, but it still doesn't change the character of the person. Some people are good, even if they feel no remorse. There's no universal law that says psychopath equals ultimate evil person. Yeah, honestly, if it's recognized and treated, much like narcissism, it can be more of a quirk to work around rather than a complete red flag in and of itself. These people can't really help that they're born this way, but they can take steps to do better in life. I went to university with a guy that I'm positive is a psychopath. Quite pleasant to be around, but he's got no regard whatsoever for you. Quite charming actually, and the best ladies' man I've ever seen. But once he does the deed with them, he's done. Like literally, they don't exist to him. I've seen him break up 2-year-long relationships of other people's and then dump the girl the morning after. I suspected he was a psychopath, but we took a psych class together and he confirmed it to me. Like straight up told me he's been diagnosed as a teen. I wouldn't call him a bad guy, but he didn't see me or anyone else as human. Just things he enjoyed interacting with. Played D&D and board games with that guy for years. I still have him on my Facebook, but I haven't seen him in like a decade. I knew a guy exactly like this, right down to him being an avid D&D player. That's how we knew him. Plus, I did community theater with him. He broke up so many couples we knew. He'd worm his way in, sleep with the girl, and then act like she didn't exist. We found out more than one gal was pretty drunk when they slept with him. One of my friends was married with a kid and ended up pregnant with this guy's kid. She was a super fun person, outgoing and confident. After this encounter, she changed. She was really depressed and just a completely different person. She was afraid to call it the unspeakable act because she was drunk, so she saw it as her own fault. Her husband stood by her, but the depression took too large of a toll and they eventually split up. It was so clear that she hated herself. What sucks the most is that he was well known for doing this. He thought it was funny. Then a couple of years later, he meets a girl, gets married, and he has 2 kids. He's always posting their happy family pictures on Facebook, and every time I see them, I just think about the destruction he's left behind. I have a hard time believing that he's faithful to his wife. It's funny that you said that he didn't see you as anyone else as human, he just enjoyed interacting with you. I said the exact thing about this guy to my husband once, because this guy was super charismatic. So even though he consistently hurt people, he had this way of making everyone forget about it. I can't explain it, but it's weird. One time I said to my husband that this guy acted like we didn't have lives outside of him. It's like we're all toys in a toy box, and we only come to life when he's ready to interact with us. It was exactly like that. My ex was always weird and emotionally stunted. He had never come out of his shell or let anyone in, which was a big problem to the relationship, but that's just the background. One day we were at our friend's house, and the conversation turned to creepy and weird things. He brought up the dark web and said something about a YouTube channel that discussed weird things that could be found on the dark web. Then he asked if we'd heard of crushing, and the look on his face and his tone told me that this was more than a casual inquiry. It seemed like he was gauging us for our reaction to see if we were into crushing. We asked what it was, and he said that it was videos of women in stiletto heels crushing things like small animals, filmed from below through glass and the like. It was oddly specific. And still his tone and careful considering expression told me he was hyper-aware of our reaction. When we reacted negatively to that being a thing, he immediately switched gears and started laughing like, "I know, right? How could anyone be into that?" When I finally did break things off, we had a heart-to-heart about all the ways our relationship had deteriorated. He was able to admit that he'd never let me in because he was afraid I wouldn't be able to handle it. But I think it may have been at least partially related to that crushing conversation, among other things. Oof. This one won't be crazy or frightening, but I remember the point at which I recognized sociopathy in my ex. We sat down in his bed one night, and I asked him to tell me things about himself. Because even though we were dating, I felt like I knew nothing about him. He couldn't give an answer beyond surface level on any emotional topic. I looked in his eyes and I saw nothingness. I realized why I could never emotionally read him or get any sort of feel. He did tell me after we broke up that he can't feel emotions and how much it sucks. I didn't understand this until much later. Before we dated, I remembered him telling me how manipulative he was with a smile. He lied constantly about everything and had 15 other relationships before me, all ending within a month. Yes, an obvious red flag that I ignored. He'd jump from religion to atheism every other month. He'd repeat cycles over and over. He was known by everyone and liked by many. Very charming. He had a flirty personality. He loved risk-taking for no reason and always got into trouble. He set fire in the attic 3 times, was disgusted by all animals and would try to do things to our cat whilst we weren't there or looking, went out and bought a load of knives and swords and kept them in his bed. This guy turned to me, no emotion on his face, and said, "What's actually wrong with hurting people?" I never left a party that fast, and I was frightened as heck. I'm once again very glad that people like this are treatable and may be able to vent their more violent tendencies onto things like video games. Or maybe video games make them curious what the real thing is like. I frankly don't want to know, and after all the cat-related stuff, and the stuff I haven't actually been able to put in this video, I'll be very glad to see the back of this topic. There was this guy I was in a couple of clubs with in high school. He was always really polite, but intense. The sort of intense you didn't want to make direct eye contact with, if that makes any sense. Anyway, one day we were walking back from McDonald's or somewhere together before our club started. It was just the 2 of us, and out of nowhere he starts talking about how he's a black belt in some martial art, and gleefully tells me about how in one of his classes they'd just learned how to break someone's neck in one move, and how cool it was. I was like, huh, Okay then, that's interesting, and I just let him go on his merry way. In the back of my mind, I was going, this guy is totally going to kill someone someday. Years later, he makes the local news. Not for a murder, but for the unspeakable act. I don't have a specific moment that's odd, but I've got a friend who told me. She was schizophrenic and psychopathic. In layman's terms, she hears voices, and also she doesn't really quite understand, care, or feel other people's emotions. But what makes her a bit of an anomaly is that the voices in her head tell her to do good things and how other people might be feeling. Like tip a little extra, or your friend needs a hug right now. Go help your coworker with their work. Compliment the shoes, they're new. Or even just you're doing just fine. She's quite interesting. Collapsing behind closed doors. The industry that everyone thinks is fine, but it's not. Veterinary. On top of being notoriously low pay and high burnout, the hedge funds discovered us in the last 5 years. 90% of the local clinics in my area sold corporate, and workers and clients are increasingly unpleased. Corporate tried to push a human healthcare model. Yeah, because that works so well. They increased prices, block scheduling so that vets see less patients per day, and push insurance. Insurance is a great idea for emergencies, but last week nationwide, the #1 pet insurer dropped 100,000 clients from their coverage. Now we have a bunch of hedge funders trying to run medicine like a retail or food business, making people dependent on insurance, only for insurances to act like a business and drop policies for not being profitable, in a field with no protections and very unlikely to ever get protections. And by the way, you can't make profit and keep medical stuff ethical. Medical businesses should never be run like a retail business. I literally save lives. I do the job of a nurse, a CNA, a phlebotomist, a dental hygienist, a rad tech, an ultrasound tech, a pharmacist, a surgical tech, a groomer, a behaviorologist, and a janitor every day. And I could make more at Walmart. Dry cleaners. Working from home and more casual wear, some places might never go back to anywhere near the same volume of customers. It's also ridiculously expensive to dry clean a shirt. I've been a professional video editor for the last 12 years, and I've never gone more than a week without a job. I've made stuff for many of the country's biggest brands, and I've got a solid resume. For the first time in my life, I've been submitting resumes every single day for the last 4 months, and I've not had one interview. It's tough out there right now. Fingers crossed my luck takes a turn. Production manager here, yeah. Going into month 3, and I feel this so hard. The collapse of our industry has been a devastating blow, and I've been applying to a remarkable quantity of jobs. Probably at least 100 to 150 applications so far. I've had 3 interviews scheduled. On the second round of one of them. No idea how many weeks or how many rounds they'll pull me through. These companies know that they have the time and the resources to drag this process out. Working freelance production, so I could get called about a job, interviewed on the spot, hired today and start work tomorrow. So this is all just a whirlwind to figure out. For whatever it's worth, I didn't start getting interview offers until I changed my resume to sound less film-y. I doubt that helps you as a video editor, but I thought I'd mention it. Wishing you tons of luck. It will get better for us. It has to. I wonder what the big pusher is here. Like, has AI made some of these jobs more niche? Or is the base software getting easier to use? It's scary to think this is happening during the golden age of television that we live in. Musicians/artists. The middle class in general has been gutted over the last 20 years, and they were the first-line supporters for independent artists. So many smaller mom-and-pop venues were crushed during COVID and either transitioned away from live music or they closed entirely. You'll still see a lot of people pushing their craft, but working-class, full-time artists in every medium have almost disappeared. Linemen for power lines. All of the experience is retiring. It's a huge change right now. Phone company is the same way. There's about to be a huge retirement crisis over there. According to a video I just watched, multi-level marketing schemes, which is a good thing.
They're just haters. Just get 2 friends, and then they'll get 2 friends, and we'll all be rich. Get in, losers, we're getting a 3rd mortgage. I think those things just evolved into another scheme that are just as good at pretending that they aren't multi-level marketing schemes. It's still easy to spot their bullcrap, though. A couple of those even appeared at Shark Tank, and they got told by the guy, "Dude, it's a pyramid scheme." And he kept saying, No, it's not. It's a cashback algorithm that works when other people join.
It's so crazy to read all these comments and personally remember a time when going to the mall, movies, bowling, arcades, restaurants, museums, art fairs and stuff were all regular activities, and people were excited for a teacher celebration week because they loved their teachers so much and couldn't wait to give them their gift. Something homemade, and then afterwards just the highlight of your day after school being riding your bikes around with your friends to go sit in a field somewhere and talk. I kinda wish the world would just slow down. Absolutely this. I've had this conversation with my partner a few times recently. The idea that you used to be able to just, for example, go ice skating without it being something you needed to frickin' save up for in the past was insane. Every activity is so highly monetized nowadays, and public spaces are so kid-unfriendly that I genuinely don't know what the frick kids are supposed to do anymore, other than scroll on their phones and play video games. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love gaming, and I think that it can be a really valuable social time with friends, or even enriching if you're playing some good single-player games, but there's just nowhere physical for people to just hang out without getting fleeced anymore. Trucking. I've been in transportation for 36 years, and you'd be scared to drive on the same road if you met some of these truck drivers. Up until COVID, you'd have a bad driver come through once in a while, and now it's rare to have a driver that understands basic instructional. How are they passing driver's tests? I try to stay off the freeways whenever possible. I've been saying this for over a year. I've been traveling a lot for the past 2 years, and I've never seen so many terrible truck drivers. They're just giving CDLs out to anyone. Emergency medical services, like paramedics and such. The people doing the work, largely, are hilariously underpaid. For every place offering $86,000 starting, there's 3 to 5 places trying to pay a critical care paramedic $18 an hour. I can't imagine doing such trauma-inducing work even for twice that. Then the crappy hours. They deserve at least the $86K. There's a trend in America that craps on the most essential professionals. Americans have decided that paramedics, social workers, professors, teachers, nurses, and pilots are towards the bottom of the social ladder. These are jobs that require great deals of energy, training, and carry a lot of responsibility. They're absolutely necessary and can't be overlooked. These people carry society on their shoulders and absolutely deserve a lot more respect and pay than what they're getting. Retail pharmacy. A complete lack of PBM regulation and corporate greed is going to lead to massive closures across the country. CVS pharmacy workers appear to be the most overworked people on the planet regardless of location right now. Live music. People see big concerts happening and they assume live music is doing pretty much as well as it always has. That's not true. Small and medium-sized venues are struggling hard, local bands are struggling hard, and small to medium-sized touring acts, well, they're struggling hard too. People don't go out and seek live music like they did 20 years ago. Small, live music bars with built-in crowds of regulars who'd always show up to check out the band of the week, they used to be commonplace. Today, they're very rare. Almost all of my friends are either teachers or musicians. I run merch tables for a couple of local bands, and they do a lot of bar shows. I'm going to be honest and say that I think the bar scene as a whole is dying. People are drinking less in general. Drinks at the bar are expensive. The only people who come to weeknight shows are either friends of the bands or old alcoholics who say dirty crap to me and try to get free merch. Weekends are better, but if you're a headlining local band, be ready for all of the friends of the other bands to leave before your set. Plus, you have bands that sneak all of their friends in without paying the cover. Even dedicated venues have a harder and harder time. We had a show at a reasonably well-known local punk and metal venue recently, and they just found out they'd been hit with a 10 p.m. noise curfew. So, you have to push the start time up, line up fewer bands, and hound them to get loaded in and sound-checked in time, plus push a faster turnaround between sets. People have less time to mingle, buy drinks, or merch. Overall, it becomes less profitable for them to even host shows. It's rough out there, guys. Veterinary medicine. I just got out. The average career is about 5 to 10 years before getting out for techs and assistants. Emotionally, it's taxing, not just because you're dealing with dying dogs every single day, but because management are all business people nowadays and don't know or give a screw about medicine, and they blame you for not hitting quotas or overspending on supplies or overtime. Pay is low, especially considering student loans taken on to be a doctor or have a specialty. Not enough people are going into the field for the above reasons, and those who are don't stay. Self-deletion rates are some of the highest by trade. We all know somebody who's decided they don't want to be alive anymore, including me. I won't go into specifics for respect. I don't know any vet med worker who isn't in therapy, self-medicating with alcohol, getting 2-dosed on Mary J to feel anymore, or a mixture of all three. And this is just a brief list of problems. Feels like it would be easier to name an industry not on this list. You start reading these answers and you realize the biggest problem is greed and big corporations owning everything. Well, yeah, at least some of them. Who could have called it? This has been your weekly snarky dose of your psycho-socialist narrator chiming in. It's not responsible for everything, though. Problems like the next answer, though, are likely a system of both late-stage capitalism and the more positive issue of people looking after themselves a bit better. The alcohol business. The craft beer bubble burst. Wine is failing to capture any young demographic. Younger demographics tend to drink less, for health reasons, cost reasons, and many of them just prefer Mary J instead. The biggest alcohol distributor in the country just laid off around 3,500 people across the country. Yeah, people will always drink, but the worse the economy gets, the more people will trade down to the cheap stuff. Here in Australia, a combination of very high and ever-increasing alcohol duties and the lack of competition in liquor retail are just throttling the industry. Craft beer and quality wine are ridiculously expensive now. I stopped drinking alcohol altogether last year, partly to be a bit healthier, but also because any decent wine or beer is too expensive, and the cheapest stuff is poor quality. Oh, the coming dystopia. We're getting Blade Runner instead of the Jetsons. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. Don't forget to subscribe to Am I the Genius? Advertising. Cutbacks in marketing budgets, the reliance on crappy amateur productions and influencers, and a general race to the bottom. Take a look at Coke's latest AI-generated spot. It all means that there's armies of extremely experienced freelancers and creative professionals who are submitting resumes for the first time in a decade. Working in Europe, I've got to say marketing is a total crap show right now. Management know better how to do the marketing than the marketing professionals thing has been brewing for a while, but I guess it's finally getting to the point where they don't even bother hiring anyone to tell not to do the thing they suggest. The nightlife industry. Bars and clubs in cities are dying. The high cost of living doesn't help. People put way less money into social activities. On the other hand, there's never been this many DJs or people who want to be a DJ. London, which is a pillar for electronic music, lost 37% of its clubs in the past 4 years. It doesn't help that you go to bars and look at the prices of drinks and see 18 quid for one cocktail. The town I live in Ireland was a bachelor party destination 10 years ago and had 4 nightclubs on one street. There's now one of them left and even that's dying. Alcohol taxes have also killed the bars, so now people just do smack instead. There's rumors that Broadway is about to collapse. Nobody can afford the ticket costs anymore. I wanted to take my girlfriend to a show on a Thursday, and it was almost $250 a ticket for a regular show on an off night. Outrageous. It's sort of an aside, but somebody pointed out that when a celebrity culture comes back into full force, it's a sign that they're struggling behind the scenes and need more established talent to pull in audiences. So right now on Broadway, almost every major star of the past few decades, even ones who've been retired for up to a decade now, are coming back. It's exciting for a whole lot of theatergoers on the surface, and it does bring in more money in audiences, so on the whole it's a plus, but it's really a bellwether indicator for those of us in the know. The auto industry. But really, they did it to themselves. Too much inventory, nobody buying the high-end trucks because they're too pricey. I work for a plant that makes parts for the big 3, and we've been barely working 4 days a week, whereas pre-pandemic we were working 6 or 7 days. It feels like auto manufacturers are all racing to compete over a comparatively small number of luxury buyers, rather than accept the slimmer margins available by serving the wider and growing segment of economy buyers. So many cars that I used to consider accessible are now upsold with premium features as pseudo-luxury or sports cars. It's getting rare to see manufacturers take research and development risk on economy vehicles that only become profitable in volume. The agriculture industry. Between the price of farmable land and equipment, it's almost impossible just to get into farming if you're not already established or wealthy. Almost everyone I know out here who farms works on family-owned land that they inherited through the generations. Hailstorms have also decimated a lot of crops this year. Several thousand acres of corn got demolished over the summer. I got my degree in agriculture business from Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. Another serious issue I see is the lack of interest from the next generation. I'm technically a young adult, and I'm basically the only person of my peers in this general career path. What makes this exceedingly shocking is that I live in Tulare County, one of the biggest AG counties in the world. What often happens is younger people inherit their grandpappy's farm and sell it off to one of the big AG conglomerates. We're talking Sunkist, Sun Pacific, or Wonderful. There aren't many small farmers left, and their plight is being forgotten. There's a host of other issues, but this is something that no one seems to talk about. Many of them are more controversial, like China's AG land ownership in the US, but I won't get into those without more prompt. Public works. We're all wildly understaffed, and any new applications we receive are wildly unqualified for the work. When roads, bridges, drainage, snow maintenance and stuff fail in the near future, there won't be anyone to help. I used to work for Public Works. Not only were we understaffed, we were grossly underpaid. Honestly, it seems like literally every industry. There's no quality anymore, just quantity and rising prices. Companies don't give a crap about training and retention, or building a knowledge base, or seeing employees as long-term investments, or adopting policies that allow innovation and independence. They just see them as a variable required cost that can be cut at any given notice to pump the numbers up for next quarter. The guys upstairs just want to make the shareholders happy in the short term, and they want to milk that as long as they can before they cash out and F right off to the next company that they can loot. Every industry is under stress by the MBAs looting them. Private equity is a cannibal out there, and if it becomes a bit larger, it will become the chief competitor of businesses that actually make things or provide services for profit. Film and TV. Barely anything has been shooting, so most of us are out of work. We're literally using the motto, stay alive till 25. I've noticed a lot of TV shows are reducing to a half-season or a 10-episode format. There also seems to be a bigger influx of reality game shows. Every trade. They really think they can pay people $13 to $15 an hour when the cheapest one-bedroom, not in the ghetto, is $1,200 to $1,400 a month. 2-year degree and $8,000 worth of tools to get started in mine. The old heads wonder why the new guys quit when they get paid a flat rate and you're hiding their tools to mess with them at work. This generation wants to be paid a livable wage, not be pranked every day when they start, and to come to work to work. I'm all for them. Shops charge a $200 flat rate for jobs and pay these guys $15 to $30. It's abysmal. They can afford to pay people what they're worth. Every business can. Getting a mix here of some answers saying that young people don't have the inclination or stomach for these sorts of jobs, or that these new jobs treat new blood like dirt, with varying levels of credibility for each claim depending on the job. All I know is it's going to be very interesting to see how these fields change going forwards. Oh yeah, and I'm tired of all of the morons on Reddit pointing at the top 1% of a trade worker in like New York City and being like, wow, trades are so great, look at how much they pay. Why isn't everyone joining trades? Unless you start your own business, which requires significant capital to start, you're gonna get wrecked unless you're lucky enough to get a union job. Since COVID, hospitality, where I used to work, used to be packed all weekend. Now we have nights on the weekend where we have more staff than customers. We used to never leave before midnight. Now we can be cleaning by 10 and have our shifties by 11. I've been working at my place for 5 years, and now, bar COVID, obviously, this summer was the least busy I've ever seen it. Local television news. The bottom is about to drop out of the entire TV industry. 2025 is going to be the year of the broadcast television apocalypse. I've noticed that my local TV isn't very local anymore. The 5 o'clock news is 6 minutes of actual local stories, 7 minutes of commercials, 4 minutes of weather, and 30 minutes of stuff that will be on the national news at 5:30 anyway. If not for the weather, I'd have very little reason to watch at all. Over the last 3 years, trucking companies have been going out of business at a rate of hundreds per month. A few years ago, the price of fuel skyrocketed to insane levels and it got ugly real fast. Fuel prices went down, but they still never went down to where they were. The biggest expense for moving freight is the cost of fuel. Teaching. When I grew up, teachers were the paragons of the middle class. Nowadays, the teachers that I know are the poorest people I know, and they're all clamoring to leave teaching. No, I honestly think most people are worried about education and where the actual frick the bottom is. Automotive. If the shareholders knew that the American manufacturer's answer to China is basically, how about bigger infotainment displays, then their stocks would collapse. I recently heard that in the past 10 years, the cost of repairs has gone up 75%. It's getting ridiculous. Used cars have gone up in value and new cars have gone up in value. And America's so heavily developed in suburban sprawl that you have to have a car to be able to move yourself in a relatively efficient manner. I mean, it's the difference between me spending at least an hour for a bus ride to get to my local college or a 20-minute drive. There's no reasonable way for me to also get on the same bus route back home after my final class at night. Emergency medical services. It's real bad, you guys. In the US, retail pharmacies are struggling. Pressure from big box retailers like Walmart and Target, pressure from online merchants like Amazon, pressure from decreased insurance reimbursements for prescriptions, shrink from the high theft. Check the stocks of CVS, Rite Aid, or Walgreens if you don't believe me. CVS can go F themselves. They bought 3 local pharmacies in the space of 2 years, closed them, and then cut hours at the only remaining location. Journalism. The world's press is now just basically 3 prompt engineers and a premium ChatGPT account. Serious concerns ought to be raised about the well-being of the fourth estate. The death of journalism is very sad and it's kinda terrifying. We're in desperate need of real journalists right now, but it's hard for those people to even get experience. The TV industry. All over the world. Lots of reasons why and how, but mainly TV was always financed by advertisers, and they're moving or have already moved to online. Broadcast TV will be talked about like the fax machine or tapes in less than 5 years, believe me. Yeah, I worked in TV. I'm packing up my last things today and tomorrow after having had to close down my company. I was internationally represented. Goodbye, 15-year career. Customer service. I honestly don't think people realize how bad this is going to be in a generation. It doesn't help that a sizable portion of the US population turned into extreme buttholes over the course of the pandemic. Nobody wants to work any customer service role for pretty good reasons. Honestly, doing a stint in analyzing for our customer service and actually reviewing the cases and listening in on typical calls has convinced me that humanity has no hope. People are morons, incapable of even basic critical thinking when faced with the slightest problem. One of the reasons they want to go with AI there is that service reps get so burned out and exasperated after a few years, and they quit or ask for transfers. And you honestly can't find people that are qualified and want to do it for the wages that are usually paid. And the C-suite doesn't see customer service making any profit, so no wage bumps. But they absolutely love them during the PR disasters. So yeah, customer service isn't even going to be remotely close to the level it is today, and it's overall pretty bad already. Employees spill the secrets from Toys R Us's and other big stores' last few months. Honestly, it was really just the usual things you'd expect from a well-known chain closing. We did things like mark down items, itemize, try to open up space. We all helped to get the property ready for potential buyers. Nothing major. Set up some barricades, repurposed the power wheels, and left in stock as fully equipped Humvees armed with turrets pulled up to take care of any of the straggler 4-year-olds who just wouldn't leave. You know, the usuals. A best friend told me a multitude of stories of the months leading up to their closing. They had go-kart races throughout the building and parking lot during closing hours the last week. Some people camped out on the roof 2 nights before closing as part of their last hurrah. This one lady came in to buy diapers and complained that even with the 40% price drop, that the diapers were still cheaper at Walmart. My best friend said, "Okay, go to Walmart then." She threw the diapers in his face and yelled at him. Many more stories, but most of them are just customers complaining. These are the more interesting ones. Screw that. I'd pay to be able to say that kind of crap to a customer. All day long. F those customers. Great, it's cheaper there. Why are you telling me, and why are you frickin' here? Went in on closing day and they were having a barbecue in the parking lot. I know a hardware store which does that every week at almost all of its dozen stores. I mean, it's considered un-Australian for our major hardware store, Bunnings, not to have a sausage sizzle every weekend. I worked for Toys R Us starting in May of 2017, and for this specific store, one of the first stores to close down, we rarely had any customers and mainly focused on trying to get people to sign up for credit card or rewards systems through us. The few customers we did have were usually grandparents. Also, we had to deal with a lot of theft. People would come in and take cartloads of stuff, and the policy is that we can't follow or confront them. For instance, this guy walked out with 3 $200 drones and nothing happened. I don't think we even called the police. We stopped caring. My last Toys R Us purchase was a Lego Star Wars BB-8, and I do recall that they pushed hard to get me to sign up for a credit card. I relented, mostly for the discount on the item. I promptly paid it off and have never used it since. Well, I can't imagine it would work much anymore, given that the store is closed. You ever notice how when a big chain is doing really bad, they start pushing for their credit cards? At least the ones that I've heard of who've done this. Take Sears, for example. If your work does this, it's time to start eyeing the exits. Well, my question is, how much stuff were you all stealing on the way out? I know someone that worked for Toys R Us a while ago. The guy had somewhere close to $10,000 worth of sealed Magic the Gathering stuff that was unopened. He only had it because he could. The store he worked at, everyone stole stuff from. Long lunches, crappier than usual customers, punching in for the day and going home, breaking down fixtures and trying to sell anything not nailed down. Nothing worth stealing, but some brooms, garbage cans and stuff went into the ether. I worked at Circuit City when they filed for bankruptcy. The customers were definitely worse then. I don't know how many times people yelled, "This is why you're losing your fricking job," when they were told no to something. It was met with an F you or the middle finger because, well, we're losing our jobs, so it doesn't matter. I rented Frozen from our local Extravision the week before it officially closed. I had to laugh at the guy behind the counter who said, "Alright, well, have that back by Tuesday. Or don't. The frick do I care?" Worked at the Toys R Us headquarters. It was the best hire of my life at the time. I was so happy, it was like a childhood dream. I was there 2 years before the close, got hired to a lean team in marketing. 3 months in, we had the, "Oh hey, everything is screwed" global conference. I got let go a month later. So in the 4 months I was there, the problems were really obvious and it was really disheartening to want to be able to help and not being able to. The campus was gorgeous and I loved it. It was also down the street from my apartment, so that was awesome. I observed an interaction between an employee and an angry customer that probably sums up the experience. A woman was yelling at this younger male employee. She was with her young daughter, she bought a bunch of DVDs that were on sale, and she was screaming at this poor guy because she apparently couldn't do math and thought they were supposed to be cheaper. She wanted more of a discount after she had already bought them, and he was patiently trying to explain to her that he couldn't do that. The best part was when she screamed, "If you don't fix this, I'm reporting you to the Better Business Bureau." He just stared back at her and said, "Well, we're going out of business, so I don't know what that's going to accomplish." I love customers that can't math. I waited in line for 10 extra minutes at a basketball game because a family asked for 5 boxes of Bojangles Chicken Supremes. Mind you, at Bojangles, these are less expensive than a stadium. Everyone knows everything in stadiums costs more. This family was going bonkers because their Supremes cost around $40 for everything. They just refused to pay. They broke out the whole wanting to speak to the managers and "you're gonna get fired" thing. The poor teenage cashier broke out a calculator to show them step by step how their Supremes really did cost around $40. They were still angry and talking crap and saying they were going to get the place closed down. Huh, my god. I worked in human resources in Toys R Us. You want a severance package? Well, we'd offer you toys. Did those toys come with a receipt so you could get a refund at the customer service counter? Are you kidding me? None at all. Just stuff in damaged boxes. Better than nothing, I guess. On a store level, the general goal is to liquidate all possible inventory. On corporate level, the general goal is to liquidate all possible assets like store fixtures and stuff. This happened at my local Borders. They were selling registers, counters, shelves, hooks out of the walls, printers, pens, desks, everything at a price. I hit up one of those Borders blowouts with my brother. It was one of the Borders with a Seattle's best coffee shop inside, and they had a counter for sale. And on the counter, they had this clunky-looking espresso machine. My brother asks a meandering employee for the cost, and the employee goes off to ask someone and then comes back and says it's $200. My brother says, $200 for a used coffee maker? This thing's worth $50 tops. The employee, who looks about 15 by the way, so beyond being an assumed-dead job, he was also just a bored teenager, shrugs and says 50's fine. My brother pays him in cash, no hint of any documentation by the way, and just goes with the kid to the register, who puts the money inside and we walk out hauling this espresso machine. My brother's pretty excited to have an espresso machine for his new place. Apparently the nice ones new in stores cost like $200, and we end up looking at the cost of our new piece of equipment online. So, this is an expensive piece of hardware. He sells it back to the manufacturer/distributor who refurbishes the models and walks away with over 15 grand. He ends up buying himself a $500 espresso machine with the earnings, so he talks about it as the time he got a $500 espresso machine for $50, and then the Borders threw in $14,500 at him as he was leaving. I heard from a cashier a story about how a little boy went to his store last week and heard about the store closing, and the boy told him that when he grows up and becomes successful, he'll rebuild Toys R Us exactly like it was. Pretty memorable story. As someone who went there periodically in the store's last few months, I can tell you it consisted of groups of employees just hanging out and having fun near the registers. When I was there in the last week, I would have sworn I interrupted a meeting of laughter just by walking in the door. Yeah, if it was anything like Circuit City when it went out of business, it was basically just getting paid to goof off and hang around. I mean, what are they going to do, fire you? And why would you care? Everyone is a, quote, manager, and everything you aren't allowed to say to rude customers in retail is finally said. My store held a meeting with everyone and swore up and down that we weren't one of the stores closing. According to the poor suckers who couldn't find work, management changed the locks and just didn't show up one day. Fortunately, I was already cynical and broken, so I jumped ship a week or two after that first meeting. I was a manager at one of the largest stores in the country. The last few months were extremely difficult. It's hard to manage a group of people who've just been told they'll be losing their jobs. We had a big rise in employee theft, and even more people just not showing up for work. What are we going to do, fire them? We actually had to hire a bunch of people after we announced bankruptcy because so many customers started coming into the stores. That being said, we did have a core team of dedicated staff that had been busting their butts every single day in the last few months. There was no possible way we could have gotten through that liquidation without them. They deserved all the credit in the world for what they had to put up with, and I couldn't be more proud of my team. On the last day when we packed up, I was really sad to see them all go. Honestly though, you can't fault the ones who goofed off or didn't really give their best for it. I mean, the ones who are doing their best are to be admired for sure, it's good loyalty to their friends at work, but in the sort of situation like Toys R Us was in, I would be on the cashier PCs browsing jobs. A friend told me he had a lady come in and ask if they were going to order more Legos, and he told her, "No, we're closing soon." The lady then told him, "You guys need to keep up on your inventory or you're going to go out of business." When she drives by next week, she'll be like, "See, idiot, I told you so. You should have ordered my Legos." My wife took the kids there for one last time at the very end. As she was leaving, they were closing and they locked the doors behind her. This is the same Toys R Us I went to as a kid, and my kids were the last customers to walk out. It felt poetic. I worked at Toys R Us a few years ago, and I was recently added to a Toys R Us alumni page on Facebook. They invited anyone who'd ever worked there to a last day barbecue in the parking lot. From what I heard at the barbecue, the last days consisted of a lot of messing around, including basketball games in areas that were already cleared out, basically taking anything that wasn't sold on the last day, a ceremony when Jeffrey the giraffe was finally laid to rest, Nerf wars across the store, hiding anything a store member wanted to take home on the last day. Honestly, it wasn't a great job, but I did make a lot of great friends working there, and it was a very bittersweet feeling watching the last few kids walk out of the store before closing up for good. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. Don't forget to subscribe to Am I the Genius? It's a little late for those who worked at Toys R Us, but if you find yourself in a similar position, look into the Workplace Innovation and Opportunity Act, or WIOA. It helps workers who are laid off or whose company has closed permanently, as well as those who are on unemployment, teen mothers and stuff, to get grants for training that can go towards a new career path. The criteria differs by state, so make sure to do some research. My company just closed its doors and I'm going through this process now. You can't get this if you already have another job, but for those who are between jobs, it could be a valuable asset to have while you're still searching. Until the store closing liquidations, I hadn't shopped at Toys R Us since I was a kid because it seemed like they were more expensive on everything. I don't know if that's true or not though. But now that it's gone, I have this weird sick feeling because of the memories I have from when I was a kid. I distinctly remember going there and buying my first toy with my own money, as in handing the cashier the pocket money myself. I feel like I let the store down or something. I'll miss it. Former corporate employee here. Most of the corporate workforce was told that they no longer needed to come into work within 2 to 3 weeks of the Chapter 7 filing. Those that stayed longer were mainly in certain finance or accounting functions which were directly involved in the liquidation. The few weeks of work before being sent packing basically turned into a giant job search support group. They even held a career fair with like 50+ companies at the HQ. It was very strange having all of our competitors represented on campus. Objectively speaking, it's a real shame what happened. There were a lot of very intelligent people who worked there, and I think there's a fair amount of misinformation about what caused the collapse. As someone who interviewed at several other profitable retail companies, we were years ahead of them in regards to many aspects of our strategy and systems. Unfortunately, Toys R Us just didn't have the resources necessary to enact the changes it needed. I miss my old team, but we're all doing just fine, albeit at different companies. Toys R Us now joins Suncoast, Walden's Books, Anchor Blue, Circuit City, and Mervyn's. And by now, I mean 7 years ago. I worked while a student in a high-end furniture store that went out of business in the UK. Over the final days, I took home a lot of those decorative filler pieces, like the random old books, the chrome airplane models and stuff. The general manager broke down and just chewed out a customer. The guy did the, "If it doesn't scan, it must be free," while she was working register, and got, "Oh, just frickin' take it, I don't give a crap anymore, so please just F off and take it. I'm done with this. 10 years and all I get from corporate is an F off and good luck, so just go." By the end, nobody cared. We were printing off copies of our CVs on the store printer and generally doing as little work as possible. I used to have this coworker at my annual summer job. Last year, she told me how she left her job as a regional manager for KFC to be a store manager at Toys R Us. They were going to pay her more, and it was also closer to home for her. I know she has 2 kids. It consisted of moving merch closer to the front door as things were selling out, making new sale signs every day, dealing with increasingly annoying customer questions, a lot of cleaning and breakdown of all shelves, hanging out with your coworkers and laughing because it's not like they're going to fire you, and then realizing how much that store has meant to you for the last 10 years of your life and having a breakdown as they lock the doors for the last time. Honestly, some of the most fun I've ever had at that store was the last couple of weeks there, goofing off more than we ever have, doing all the things we weren't supposed to do and reminiscing about pastimes and employees. We held a makeshift funeral when we packed Jeffrey the giraffe up for the last time. I actually kind of missed that place, that's for sure. The store I worked at was one of the first to start liquidating. We were completely cleared out in April, and thank God for that. That place was an absolute nightmare by the end of it. A daily crowd that rivaled Black Friday with half the staff of that event. Typically, it was just one floor worker and a manager who'd be in charge of helping guests with whatever they needed. So my shifts were absolutely exhausting with all of the manual labor I'd end up doing. By the end, I stopped caring about what people thought of me or my customer service. One lady told me I was incredibly rude for not looking in the back for a toy that had been sold out for years. "I'll be speaking to your manager about this." Oh yeah? What are they going to do? Fire me? That was our daily business, getting screamed at by penny-pinching rednecks and junkies who needed to stock up on the cheapest bunch of crap. People watching just got sad after a while. There was constant shoplifting. Overall, it was one of the most miserable experiences I've ever had. I only stayed on staff because I knew it would just be harder for everyone else if I quit. I met some decent people there, but I'm happy that my first retail experience is over. Man, I didn't realize this place closed as late as 2018, and the experiences honestly seem to range from more or less positive and bittersweet to it being people's personal Vietnam. I don't know what to make of that. Does it depend on how good your manager was and how crappy the people were in your state? I worked there right up until the end as well, except for the last day because I just couldn't take it anymore. I'll miss my coworkers, but not the manager. He was a dillweed of colossal proportions, making female employees uncomfortable, and even was caught with one of them. HR did nothing about it, so I wish the worst for him and for them. I was with a Kmart store that closed in December 2014. It was very bittersweet for me personally. It was my first job. I'd worked there for 7.5 years, worked my way up from stock person to eventually assistant manager. However, it was a lot of fun, almost therapeutic to tear down your workplace. Someone externally came in and guided us through liquidations. At first it was the merchandise. Eventually, it was the fixtures and basically anything that wasn't bolted down to the ground. Every day, moving stuff forward. The last hour, everything was 99% off, but it was all junk. Once we closed the doors, a small team stayed for 2 more weeks to clean and got rid of what didn't sell. We leased the building, so we had to have it pretty empty even though it was clearly going to be torn down. Overall, the mood was pretty relaxed, but there were tears on the last day. I know this sounds lame, but I took a weird sense of pride being the last person to walk out and lock up the building one final time. I worked at Toys R Us in Australia, which was in the process of liquidating and closing their doors. Working mostly involved keeping the store looking stocked, even though no stock was coming in, and recovering shelves. There was a large influx of people every time some news came out, so the store could get pretty trashed. Certain customers seem to have a "the store is closing anyway" mentality when it comes to shopping. I worked for corporate. The last months consisted of just trying to get everyone prepared to look for a new job. I was a video producer and photographer. Some team members had been there their entire lives, so for 3 days I offered to take professional pictures for every team member to use on LinkedIn. It was the best way I could help with my skills. We also held a career fair in the office and the distribution centers. The last thing I created was a video montage for our final goodbye. We used it on our store pages as our final piece of media. Toys R Us is still going strong in some other countries, like Canada. Well, that's a pretty big sign of global warming. Giraffes are migrating to Canada. My wife worked for Blockbuster when they finally closed down. She stocked a box behind the counter with movies that we wanted and video games that I wanted. We ended up getting like 50 movies and 5 video games for $30. At a Radio Shack that was closing. For the first few weeks it was business as usual, like any sale, but better deals. Then they told us that nobody was being transferred and everyone was getting fired, including my manager, a 36-year-old newlywed who had worked for the company since she was 18. We smoked in the store with customers there and put them out on the carpeted floors. They couldn't replace us, so we were untouchable. It was depressing but awesome in a way. That was a long time ago. One of my old managers actually passed away in 2018. He had been royally screwed by the first bankruptcy. I heard his retirement was gone, but he stayed until pretty much the end. I do miss their battery deals and the convenience of going to get charging or audio cables. Well, I can tell you from my store closing, everyone gets lazier and lazier and lazier and meaner, and customers get more entitled. It's frickin' bullcrap, and I walked out. F them. Oh, and that one guy that literally asked for my opinion on a game and then instantly said, "I don't want to hear your story," and then waved me off as he walked away. F you personally, dude. I worked at a different bankrupt store for the summer, but I think the experience is a bit similar. We were making a lot of new discount signs just about every day to reflect the constantly dropping prices. We don't have to check in the back for anything because all of our products are already on the floor. People ask for price checks even when it's half off or the discounted price is clearly printed nearby, and then complain about how expensive it is. I've only been there a few weeks, so I don't have the same attachment to the store that some people did at the end of Toys R Us, but the people who'd been there longer than I have, for the most part, jumped ship to find work elsewhere. It was weird when a guy walked by with both of the mannequins from the lingerie section deconstructed in a cart. I don't know how much those cost him. You can also buy the tables. My sister worked at Toys R Us. During her final months, it consisted of huge crowds of people who were waiting in line for the huge discounts, selling shelves to another company, and her alcoholic manager whining at the employees. There was lots of sobbing and weeping for her co-workers because they couldn't get another job after that one. I got let go after Christmas 2017, but my friend still worked there and I came in to help sometimes when she was the only one in the store basically. That last few months had a very scary screw it attitude, so much so that they trusted an ex-employee, me, to run our zone, electronics, and handle top dollar crap. I probably could have walked out of there with an Xbox and a crap ton of games without my old manager saying a word. Also, once the store closed for the night, literally everyone just screwed around. Stuff got broken, people rode the heavy item cart thingies and jousted in the aisles with them. That was great. Screaming, crying, and losing it. The funniest thing that ever broke my brain. Every time I see this one Vine where it's the GameCube startup sound, but it ends up with this guy tripping, spilling his massive drink, and yelling the F word, I burst out laughing. I can't explain why. Me and two of my friends were working on a movie, but we messed up some files and accidentally replaced the black screen after a character's death with a panorama of cinnamon rolls. I was in a large multi-floor bookstore walking down a flight of stairs when I heard a phone ring. A sales clerk answered it. "Self-help, may I help you?" That seemed like the funniest thing in the world to me. I burst out laughing. Not just one chuckle, but sustained laughter that made people start looking at me. That seemed even more absurd, so I rushed to a new section, still laughing and attracting more attention, and sped up more, laughing harder, attracting new attention in every new place I ran to, until eventually I ran a half circuit of the floor and took refuge under the stairs I'd come down so that I could compose myself. I was in an SAT class and we were going over practice questions. The instructor read out, "A group of spoon collectors," and I began laughing so hard and for so long that I had to leave a classroom. I mean, I'm over it now, but it was troubling. Sometime in the mid to late aughts, my husband was on the phone with iRobot customer support regarding our Roomba. I was in another room, but I could hear his side of the conversation quite clearly, and I could tell he wasn't getting the results he'd hoped for. As he got more frustrated, he blurted out, "I've had problems with this robot since the day I brought it home." Something about that particular phrase just hit me hard. I immediately started laughing and I couldn't stop. I was still laughing when he got off the phone. Understandably, he wanted to know what was wrong with me. Through maniacal laughter, I parroted the phrase back to him, which had something of a feedback loop effect on my laughter. It's been over a decade, but thinking of that phrase still makes me giggle. My husband was on the phone with Xbox 360 tech support back in 2007 because one of the games he downloaded didn't work. He kept trying to tell the tech the name of the game, but the tech couldn't understand him. So he goes, "Streets of Rage! Rage! Like what I'm feeling right now!" And my mum and I just cracked the F up. We had tears coming out of our eyes. I don't know why it was so funny, but here we are 13 years later still cracking up about it. The things we yell on the phone when we've been waiting for help for 30 minutes, referred through 3 different people, and honestly all we want to do is play our video games after a hard day. I feel for you, both frustrated gamers and telephone help people. A few weeks back I was taking a shower. I looked at my foot and it just looked so stupid that I started laughing and couldn't stop. Like, I had these weird paw-like failed hands attached to my legs, and they were so ridiculous looking, and I was just going around with my body ending that way. I laughed at my foot for about 5 straight minutes. I was working in a group home, finishing up some paperwork after an overnight shift, and accidentally wrote shampoo instead of shampoo. One of the residents asked me if I needed help because I was laughing so hard. I misheard an episode of Octonauts about the coconut crab. The phrase astronaut crabs conjured simultaneous images of crabs in spacesuits and also giant crabs cracking open an astronaut with their claws, and I absolutely lost it. I could hardly breathe. There were tears of mirth. My children were terrified but also trying to keep up with the joke, which I could barely explain. We still talk about it, but it will never be quite as funny as when my brain caught me by surprise. I legitimately almost died, I'm pretty sure, playing a video game. One of my wife's favorite games is Shenmue. Originally released on the Dreamcast in 1999, it plays like an early prototype for games like Yakuza or Sleeping Dogs. But it was very crude by any modern standard. It's quite bad, I'd say in fact, but in a so bad it's good sort of way, which is very rare for video games. They put out a remaster a couple of years ago and she had me play through it while she watched. She wanted to see what I thought of it. The plot revolves around the main character investigating his father's murder. He does this mostly by wandering around town and just asking random people on the street questions, hoping it will somehow help. At one point, he gets a lead that something might be going on at the docks. The main character, who isn't too bright, thinks, "Hey, sailors work at the docks, I should talk to some sailors." So, do you go to the docks? No, that would make too much sense. Instead, as you wander around town aimlessly, you can just ask people, "Do you know where I could find some sailors?" Over and over again. It starts to get pretty funny, just asking random people for sailors constantly. Well, at one point, my wife went to the bathroom and I stopped to look at the in-game journal. It's where the game keeps all of your notes of things that you've learned, but they're all written in faux handwriting, as if the main character wrote himself a note. I flip it open, and the only thing on the current page in big letters is, "Must find sailors!" Triple exclamation marks. I completely lost it. We'd already been kind of laughing about this search for sailors for like an hour, and when that popped up it was like the last straw, and something in my head just broke. I was completely hysterical with laughter. I couldn't stop. I couldn't breathe, it started to hurt. That only made me laugh harder, and I was starting to worry I was going to pass out. My wife walked back in from the bathroom and was very confused. She was just in time to see my cat, who had been curled up on the couch next to me, start to yowl and swat at me, irritated. Apparently my lunatic laughter had unnerved him. "What's so funny?" she asked. I gestured weakly to the screen with the still open journal on it and managed to wheeze out, "Must find sailors!" as I fell into another fit of laughter. It was a good 5 to 10 minutes before I was coherent. "Must find sailors" is still a nice little private joke between us. I got stuck in a laughing loop with my then 1-year-old son. He was laughing at my laugh and I was laughing at his laugh. It was the better part of an hour and we were both exhausted afterwards. It was over 30 years ago and it still makes me chuckle when I think about it. This reminds me of a sleepover I had in middle school. There wasn't enough couch space for all of us girls to sleep on, so me and a few of my friends were on the floor. I can't explain why, but everything I heard was hilarious. I laughed until it hurt to smile. I justified it by saying that everything is funny on the floor, so we all took turns lying on the carpet and laughing our butts off. The people on the couch started laughing at the people on the floor, and the people on the floor were laughing because the people on the couch were laughing. It still holds true today. Everything really is funny on the floor. In high school, a guy at my table was asked if he'd ever done the deed with anyone, and with the most straight face ever he said, "No, but I've seen dogs do it." His frankness and deadpan attitude made me laugh so hard and for so long, I was worried I was going to pass out. There's a sticker in my phone keyboard gallery of a purple llama with a box of carrots and it says, "Busy." I saw it at work and laughed so hard that I was crying. I legitimately couldn't stop my brain from recalling the image. I had to leave work. Update. It's actually a person dressed in a purple llama suit. Drama llama. I don't remember the context, but my best friend and I, then in our pre-teens or early teens, were flopping around on the bedroom floor screaming, "Fish out of water!" We insisted on showing her mum, who looked at us like we were on crystal. I almost passed out. I couldn't breathe from laughing so hard. Oh, there was a couple of these in my early teens. I couldn't for the life of me decide what was so bloody funny, only that I felt exhausted and so happy afterwards. I wonder what I'd have to do to experience that kind of joy and exhausting laugh in my 30s. I was in the grocery store about 2 weeks ago and I went to grab some eggs. As I opened the box to check them, I was reminded of a post on Reddit about a guy that went a great deal of his life not knowing why people would open egg boxes, but was nervous that if he didn't do it, then people would stare at him, so he'd open them just to look the part. I started laughing out loud while looking at eggs. People were staring at me. I never got out of there so fast. My mum once said, "Boo!" to my dad, who kept hiccuping just to make him stop. But she said it in the most innocent and pure way that we couldn't stop laughing. The laughing went on for like an hour though. Years later, I was having a drink with my best friend when she developed the hiccups. I told her I'd have to scare her. About 5 minutes later, I told her I had something very serious to talk to her about. She leaned in, looking a bit worried. I sighed heavily and said, "You're pregnant." Her eyes got huge and in a panicked voice she asked, "I am?" She then immediately realized her mistake, but it was too late. I was dying laughing, literal tears running down my face. I couldn't pull it together. It's still a memory that makes me giggle, and the best part is, it worked. Her hiccups stopped. Me and some friends went on a trip with this youth leadership organization. The trip was supposed to last 5 days, but our flight back was delayed a full 22 hours. We ended up staying in a hotel and playing Cards Against Humanity. I think the prompt had something to do with the worst line on a first date, or something like that, and one of us just answered, "Yeast." We laughed for a full 10 minutes, and my sides hurt for the rest of the night. It was a windy day and I was eating a bagged lunch with my coworkers. Suddenly, a huge gust of wind blew the bag and all of my food away, leaving me staring at the empty table with a fork in my hand. I didn't even try to catch it. I just started laughing so hard that I had to lay on the ground. The ability to laugh at my own pain is like my only superpower. This is the end bloopers when they're talking about their religion, and Craig Robinson says, "And Danny's Muslim," and Danny McBride just answers, "Shalom." It's not even funny, but I lose my crap every single time. I read a meme asking if Norwegian clowns say hajonk. My girlfriend speaks fluent Norwegian and told me how that would be pronounced. Kind of a hjönk. I thought I was going to pass out from a lack of air due to laughing. I'd catch a grip every now and then, and a quiet hjönk would corpse me into laughing harder. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. Don't forget to subscribe to Am I the Genius? My family was eating at Red Robin. My grandpa told a great joke. I laughed so hard that I crapped my pants. I was like 5. My dad took me to the restroom and asked if they were my lucky underwear. I said no, and he cut them off with his pocket knife, cleaned me up, and went back out to finish our food. My husband made our 4-year-old laugh so hard that he peed himself, and my husband laughed and tried to reassure him it was okay. The next day, I was alone in the house, holding our newborn, and our 4-year-old announces that it's funny to pee in your pants. At first, I'm confused, and then I'm horrified as he just begins peeing and this wet stain starts spreading on his trousers. He was so confused when I didn't find it funny. Luckily, we had a comforter that was just sort of half on the couch, half on the floor, and he mainly peed on that, so that I could just toss it in the washer and dryer. But I had to explain to him, it's funny and okay when it's an accident, not when it's on purpose. I was in Toys R Us with my 3-year-old, and suddenly she says she has to go to the bathroom. Oh no, number 1 or 2? 2! I grab her hand and I rush to find an employee. Do you have a bathroom? Yeah, but it's all the way on the other end of the store. I turn to my daughter. We gotta run, okay? Nah, don't worry, I blew it out. What's that now? I blew it out! I could barely carry my poopy daughter through the store because I was laughing uncontrollably. I had to ditch her pants and underwear in the bathroom garbage and carry her undressed out with my coat wrapped around her waist, still laughing hysterically. I must have looked absolutely insane. This actually happened to me and a friend of mine. We were high and just typing random phrases into Google Translate. He suggested I type in dingleberries and translate it to Spanish. It translated to Bayas del Dingle. For some reason, we lost our minds at that. I don't think we stopped laughing for like half an hour. My head was throbbing from laughing so hard and my lungs hurt. My friend and I were watching Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs when we were about 12. There's a scene in that movie where a giant bowl of water spills on everyone sitting in the bleachers, and there's a guy in the splash zone ready to get wet, except everybody apart from him gets splashed instead, and he throws his hat on the ground and yells, "Oh, come on!" My friend and I laughed our butts off at this, and eventually it led to us replaying a ton of scenes in slow motion, zoomed in. There was a scene in South Park where they're trying to get a whale to the moon. Long story, it makes no sense. But there's one gag that the boys cannot get NASA to do it, so they go to MASA, the Mexican Space Agency. So when the rocket takes off with the whale, some mariachis come out and play a song to celebrate. I don't know why, but that caught us off guard, and a friend and me started laughing so hard and so long that I thought I was going to die of asphyxia. Barely relevant, but now you just made me look up the clip where Randy Marsh goes on Wheel of Fortune and has an unfortunate word guess involving a racial slur. It is the funniest damn thing I've ever seen. It was actually something in an Ask Reddit thread. The question was something along the lines of, what is an unsolved mystery or paranormal activity that cannot be explained? Somebody's reply was that one time when they were younger, they tooted and the TV turned off. I've got no idea why, but something about how it was just sandwiched between much more serious replies just made me lose it. I was laughing so much that my wife came to ask what was so funny. Her reaction, basically calling me an idiot, made me laugh even more. Even as I typed this comment, I'm grinning like an idiot thinking about it. Not on a Reddit post, but a username. I don't usually even read usernames, but there was a completely serious comment on a serious post made by user poop-flavored pea, or something to that effect. I laughed way harder than you'd expect from a 37-year-old woman. Many years ago, I went through about a week-long phase where I simply could not read my credit card number over the phone without laughing hysterically. No reason, it just started one day. Then I think I got all up in my head and it just snowballed from there. Every time I tried to order food, confirm some travel reservation, whatever, I'd start laughing and it would take me forever to get through the number. The surprising thing was how infectious the laughter was. I thought the people on the other end of the phone would be annoyed, but probably 9 times out of 10 they'd start laughing too. It was like some virulent mindworm of contagious hysteria. And then just as suddenly as it started, it was over. Hasn't happened since, although I still brace myself every time, just in case. I had a dream recently that a friend of mine spent 2 full hours focusing intently hard on writing something down. When he was finally finished, he showed it to me. In a 5-year-old's handwriting in crayon, the page simply read, "Apple cider dog nuts." I laughed so hard I woke myself up crying. Also, I was once at a small but serious poetry reading event at my university. A few people spoke about different connections they had to the poet. Like the host of the event, who introduced, had gone to grad school with her, the university president who had worked with her mentor. My friend whispered to me in this goopy voice, "And I nailed her mom." We were both laughing so hard that people were turning around to glare like 4 rows ahead, even though we were trying to be silent. I laughed on and off for half an hour and had to leave the event early because it was so disruptive and inappropriate. A double headstone at a cemetery for someone with the last name Graves. Wet soup. Just the idea of going into a restaurant, asking how the soup is, and being told wet. I had my best friend in high school over for a sleepover, and my mum had fallen asleep on the couch while we were all hanging out. My little brother, who was around 10 at the time, thought that it would be funny to grab my mum's hairdryer, stand over her sleeping body, point the hairdryer at her and yell, "Where were you on the night of the murder?" startling her awake. That was enough to send us into the hysterics, but what made it even better was her reaction of shaking her head, slowly sitting up and telling my brother, "Okay, time for bed," in her tiredest voice. My best friend and I spent the next 10 minutes rolling around on the floor, laughing and screaming. My wife, then girlfriend, and I were on the bus. A couple of blazed dudes got on the bus and randomly one of them said, "Dude, what if someone made medical Mary J that gave you superpowers?" My girlfriend nearly died laughing. She tried to stay somewhat quiet to not be rude, but she failed. The stoners continued to talk about this and what kind of powers they'd want for the whole bus ride, like imitating taking a hit and saying, "Oh, I've got munchie vision," which only made my girlfriend's laughing fits worse. Her laughing fit eventually caused me to laugh uncontrollably. It was just like a self-sustaining fusion reaction at that point. A song with the lyrics, "Ooh, that smell, can't you smell that smell?" came on the radio, and my husband quietly said, "What, did she toot or something?" to himself. He didn't even mean for it to be funny. I think he just thought the song was dumb. I died laughing, and I'm cracking up right now thinking about it, and it was like 8 years ago. Really medicated on green herb, doing a puzzle with my husband, and we were eating the crappiest frozen pizza we had ever eaten. Like, just the worst. It was supposed to be garlic cheese, and it tasted like absolute nothing and cardboard. So we started pulling everything out of the fridge to put on top of it and make it better. Finally, my husband decided he was just going to cook a bunch of hot dogs and roll them up in the pizza. Somehow, the concept of hot dog pizza was so incredibly funny, we both started laughing and couldn't stop. I laughed so hard for so long it became physically painful and I couldn't breathe. But I couldn't stop laughing, so I was just barking out this weird honking cough. By the time we stopped laughing, I was pretty sure I'd laughed myself sober. We marked the date on our calendar, so we never forgot Hot Dog Pizza Day. And a month after that night, Pizza Hut came out with hot dog crust pizza, and I swear they were spying on us. In a movie my family and I were watching, a man was slowly lifting a firearm to shoot a woman. They didn't show her getting hit, they only showed a close-up of her high heels staggering back and forth. I lost it laughing. Everybody in the room was glaring at me. Yep, I'm pretty sure I ruined the final Harry Potter film for everyone by laughing non-stop during the final scene where they're all aged up and dropping off their kids at the Hogwarts train. I don't know why, I think the makeup just looked so funny to me at the time and I went into an unstoppable laughing loop. My friends hated me and everyone in the cinema was telling me to shut up. I'm so sorry, everyone. I read a comment with a typo on a post yesterday and I just lost it laughing. They'd written rainbow capitalism, but accidentally replaced the C with an F. Whole new hilarious meaning. Last night I randomly thought of a line from one of those Markov chain generators. This was from an automatically generated Hallmark movie and the line was, "Interior, small town snow globe refillery. Mother says, I fill snow globes with snow globe juice better than Jesus' claws." That's probably not what it said word for word, as it's been a while since I saw it, but it was so random that I couldn't even explain why I was laughing. I still don't understand it. A young cousin of mine was reading a book about a farmer, Farmer Brown, to her teddy bear. She paused to say something about it to the bear, and I asked what's his name. She looked at me completely dead-faced and said, "Farmer Brown," as though I were a complete idiot. I laughed so hard I ended up crying, throwing up, and I think I very nearly went into some sort of convulsion. I was reading a list, probably on BuzzFeed, I don't know, and it was one of those that had alternate names for things like Danger Noodle for snakes, and I got to Volcano, Mountain Fountain, and I legitimately laughed for 20 minutes. Had to pee, cry, couldn't breathe, the whole works. I couldn't even think about it for 2 weeks without cracking up again. My husband thought I'd honestly lost my mind. My husband was in charge of mashed potatoes at Thanksgiving. He forgot the word pot, and asked me where I keep my boiling bowl. And that did it for me. My friends and I nearly ended ourselves laughing at the Benedict Cumberbatch memes, Benadryl Cabbage Patch and so on. It was at the point where it physically hurt to laugh. I was feeding my newborn in the middle of the night and watching Dave Chappelle. The Rick James skit was on. I cry-laughed so hard that my husband woke up and took the baby away because he was afraid I was going to drop him. He asked me what was wrong and I snorted, "I'm Rick James, B-word," and he was not amused. From beer to bratwurst, Germans answer your questions about their country. You guys have got a stereotype about being efficient. Do you see the rest of the world as ineffective? No, not really, although I do think that we value punctuality and thoroughness, but then again, who doesn't? Alright, so here's a playbook of how this video is going to go. You'll notice that most of these are short questions from foreigners, with answers from actual Germans, mostly the same one MVP guy writing in. I'm going to refrain from my impersonation of a German accent, as I feel that would get very old very quickly for all of us across these many answers. Let's not obscure the educational info we're getting here. Maybe I will do it occasionally if I feel that the answer is comical in nature, or if it's someone answering who isn't that one guy I mentioned, or just if there's a lot of answers and I need to differentiate between voices. Big thank you to username tbook2304 for writing so many answers. I heard your internet connection there is usually pretty trash. Is that true? Yeah, it's slow and expensive. And never talk about Wi-Fi on ice. What the hell is up with Bavaria? Like, did you guys kidnap them? They seem like they never wanted to be German. How come they're part of Germany in the first place? God, let me tell you, even we don't know what's up with them. Okay, as a Bavarian, we don't know how we ended up in Germany either. Eventually, we'll pull a Bavexit and create the People's Republic of the Alps together with Austria, since they have the only bearable dialect and slang to our ears out of all the other German-speaking regions. This was a jovial jab at the fact that the entire region around the Alps, despite consisting of 4 entirely different countries, has more in common than some German states that are right next to each other. Ha! Most people wouldn't notice if they crossed the border from here to the south. Huh. As someone who has Flemish or Dutch as their native language, I understand a ton of German even without ever really learning it. I can't speak it though. Do you understand as much of the Dutch language as we do of yours, Germans? I can actually get the gist of written Dutch, yes. Spoken is impossible, same way as it is for you. How the frick do you learn the grammatical genders in your language? I don't know. I feel sorry for anyone learning German grammar. David Hasselhoff. Why? Well, he tore down the Berlin Wall with the power of his voice. I mean, he's a living meme, that's it. Why is it common for office workers to smoke so much? Like when I was walking around there, everyone was out smoking 3 or 4 times an hour. I think many workers want to take advantage of the Raucherpausen, a break for you to smoke. Where I worked, if you don't smoke, you don't have a longer break to make up for it. So maybe that's why. Any thoughts on Rammstein? Are Germans as infatuated with them as the rest of the world is? A lot of Germans love Rammstein, yes. Hey, could you send over some Kinder Eggs? Not the Joy ones. I want the real crap. I still don't understand why they're banned in America, but you can buy rifles at your grocery stores. Why do many of you still have 90s haircuts? As a German, not even I know why. Can you understand Swiss German? Even just a little? I understand Swiss people speaking German, but Swiss German is a whole other level of insanity. Do you have a stereotype about you that isn't true? I sometimes see that other people think our train system is efficient and always punctual, but the opposite is actually the reality. Also, I think we're quite funny and have a great sense of humor against popular belief. And a lot of people think we wear traditional lederhosen and drindle all the time, which isn't true. Whenever someone trashes German humor, the best response is, German humor is no laughing matter. What's the name of that incredibly tasty white sausage that's sold everywhere? The sausage could be Weisswurst? I've heard stories of tourists doing Third Reich salutes, also known as Elon Musk salutes, in Germany, as a joke, and immediately getting deported. Is there truth to this no-tolerance policy of the symbols of that regime? Yes, the symbols of the Third Reich are forbidden, and it's definitely stupid to do that salute in front of a police officer or something similar. It will cost you a bit of money or worse. Otherwise, there's also a bunch of people who glorify the symbols and never really get into trouble, and would think that it's funny. Arrested, maybe, for a short time. It's illegal and there is a fine. Also, Germans really don't think this is funny. Most of them won't even understand how you could have gotten to the idea that this might be a funny thing to do. Still, so many people in and outside of Germany do it. In mockery? Honestly, I don't understand it. Really bad taste, in my opinion. I think it's an abstraction and distance thing. Like, you know how after a certain point an evil plan becomes over the top to the point of absurdity and hilarious? Most of us foreigners are more distant from the thing, and it's unfathomable. To the point of seeming like supervillain syndrome level plans. It doesn't help that the ideology is bonkers. But in Germany it's like, dude, that's not funny. There was really a guy who did that, and it's not just something you saw on TV or in a book. Like people hamming it up by quoting Emperor Palpatine as funny because there wasn't a planet full of people who were actually murdered. It's one of the reasons visiting the camps is powerful. It removes a level of abstraction and distance, even for people who intellectually understand that it was real. The people doing the Third Reich salutes are being wacky Indiana Jones villains who are evil to the point of comic absurdity. It's also part of the legacy of other countries struggling to conceptualize the Third Reich. Briefly, our culture was like, we're kind of racists too, guys. Also, our industrialists make a lot of money working with the Third Reich. And that guy Milgram did his test showing most people will follow orders. Maybe we... Actually, nope. Inherently evil, different scale, don't want to hear it. Those guys had no redeeming qualities and are comic two-dimensional supervillains now, and that's how we want all of our TV shows and movies to show them. You see, that shift in the understanding and portrayal of the lead-up to the Third Reich opened up the way for others to treat them like a joke. In Germany, the human dynamic of the Third Reich and their motivations and fears is more covered because they have to be. Elsewhere, it's like, we don't want to examine that too closely because it might mean we have to change. Germany had no choice but to change. The rest of us had the choice to be like, the Third Reich weren't people, they're Indiana Jones villains who kick puppies and say things like, curses, and swish their cloaks as they exit the room. And the latter is basically funny. It's funny to be so ridiculously two-dimensionally evil and funny to pretend to be. The problem is tying the concept of an unrealistic, absurd caricature of evil into a real-world atrocity, because there's an inherent disconnect. It's also one of the reasons the rise of the far right in other countries took so long to notice, because if you call someone a fascist or the German N-word, it's a punch below the belt and you sound ridiculous. It'd be like saying, guys, he's a literal Sith Lord. And people are going, "You're ridiculous. Of course he's not a literal Sith Lord. He's not twirling his mustache and cackling." It took a while for people to be like, "Oh, crap, you're right, those guys are evil." I was confused because they seemed like normal people. They didn't go on megalomaniacal rants about power while holding a spy hostage while wearing a silly uniform telling me their immigration plan, so I didn't notice. Well, that's the biggest question on a lot of our viewers' minds answered. Fascinating breakdown of the mentality in Germany, with a good analysis of why it's hard to talk about fascism elsewhere. I'm from Austria, and I just want to ask what your view on your southern neighbor is. I personally really like our neighbor. I went skiing in Austria, and every Austrian I've met was polite and really friendly. I think Austria is awesome, but maybe that's because I'm biased. I'm Bavarian. Yeah, I have a question. Schnitzel, please. Yeah, schnitzel is amazing. Do you speak a local German dialect in addition to formal German? It depends on where and how you grew up. I can speak the dialect of my grandmother and mother when I'm in the regions, but not voluntarily because I moved away as a child. A friend of mine always says his dialect is horrible because he learned it from his family, but grew up in another region. It's not taught in school, with one exception, which is Platt. That's not a dialect, albeit often referred to as such. It's actually its own language, and in newer times, conversation efforts are being made, by making it optional in schools, for example. Are unexploded bombs from World War II a big problem? Actually, yes. Often we hear that lost bombs have been found in cities and they have to evacuate the areas to remove it. That happens more than people think here. Not a question, but the way they pronounce every word, I love it. From an outside ear, it's so unique and cool, if I can say so. Oh, that's good to hear. Most of the time, everyone thinks we just sound angry. Germans are revered for their love of beer, but I want to hear it from the source. What's the best German beer? To add, if it's not already the best, what's the most popular? That's a dangerous question to ask, depending on where you are. People have very strong opinions on their beer. But a lot of them stay true to the ones that are locally produced, so I can't really say what's the best in general, but I like Erdinger and Paulaner. We found the Bavarian. I'm partial to Augustiner, Tegernsee, and Keimsee. I do like Paulaner and despise Hofbrau. Löwenbrau is also tolerable. Then there's Potts Landbier, which is from Olde, not far from Münster. Okay, I've read all of the other answers and I've learned some great stuff. I wish our USA educational system was as heavy-handed about the atrocities during World War II as yours is. That being said, here's my question. The Germans answering these questions are hilarious, and yet I don't speak German. Is there a place where I can find German humor in English? Why do you have die, das, and der? You've probably lowered my grade by 1 or 2 letters. Yeah, sorry, our grammar is really weird, and I applaud you for trying to learn it. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. Don't forget to subscribe to Am I the Genius? Do you hate British people? No, but there's a stereotype of thinking you drink a lot. Is that actually true? It depends on your definition, to be honest. We like to think of ourselves as party animals, but the level of casual beer drinking I've seen in Germany just left me stunned in awe and admiration. Do you guys really have free education just for, like, everyone? Yes, we have. For university, we have to pay a bit for every semester though, depends on what you're studying. That can be from €150 to €400 in my experience. But we get free train tickets for the semester for that money, amongst other stuff. Do you have any dead relatives that fought for the Axis in the war? Well, he didn't die in the war, but my great-grandfather fought in Finland, got dropped off near Würzburg and walked 60 kilometers home. Also, my grandfather, his son-in-law, born in 1930, was just under the age when kids got drafted. Everybody older than him in our village went to fight. It shows me that people fighting a war can also have a backstory. So maybe the Kraut that the British soldier killed wasn't a Third Reich enthusiast, but actually Franz, the carpenter, or Hans, the farmer. Wars are just useless. Another story from my village is about a man that my mother described as the nicest man she's ever known. To everybody, old and young people, no matter where they're from. A few years after he died and she got older, she was told that he was actually an SS member. So, Thomas Anders and Dieter Bohlen, aka Modern Talking, are they considered an iconic part of German culture, or is it like, just some old stupid pop singers from the 90s? If it wasn't for a few scripted casting shows in which Dieter Bohlen is a member of the jury, nobody would even know that they existed. What's a good recipe for schnitzel? Use a tenderizer to beat the meat? Well, that sounds wrong. Then put it into a plate full of flour, then into another plate full of beaten eggs, and finally put it onto a plate with breadcrumbs. Then you can fry it in a pan and eat it, maybe with some lemon juice. Well, that's the way I remember it.
Do you notice your accent when you speak English? Do you actually eat spätzle?
I think it depends. We learn English pretty early now in school, so I think our pronunciation is getting better. But a lot of Germans have a problem with the TH sound. And yes, spätzle are amazing, especially if Oma made them. American here who lived in Germany. There's two kinds of German English speakers. The mad doctor stereotype and the "holy crap, you're not actually from Germany, are you?" sort. The second one blew my mind. Their American accents are spot on, native perfect. I've worked with lots of different people from all over the world who learned English to come to the US, and while many of them are frankly better speakers than most native English speakers, because they had to actually rigorously learn the language instead of just sort of inheriting it, virtually none of them truly landed the accent. Only Germans have done that so far, and some of the Nordics as well.
Why do a lot of you get drunk at 7 in the morning?
Alcohol is very prominent in our culture. We're proud of our beer, and our drinking age starts at 14. You can drink beer and wine with your parents or a guardian watching, so drinking any time during the day is quite common.
It's not that widespread. Apart from serious alcoholism, there aren't many occasions people would drink in the morning.
A beer or 3 after work, sure. But in the morning it's either carnival, people are still drinking from the night before, or it's a Berlin techno party. We're not getting drunk at 7 in the morning, we're getting drunk at 11 in the evening, and we're still drunk at 7. That's the difference.
What's the most common reaction you get when you tell someone that you're German?
On the internet, and especially in online video games, they'll make Third Reich jokes, even though that reaction is decreasing. In real life, people just say, "Oh, okay." To what extent do your older relatives talk about the Second World War or life during the East Communist era? Is there a taboo around discussing it? And on a lighter note, what the F is up with you guys and water? Nobody drinks the perfectly clean, drinkable tap water, and everyone insists on drinking fizzy water, i.e. the ghastliest, least refreshing beverage known to man. We demand answers.
My grandparents talk about the war all the time, and I actually love hearing about their stories. Lots of older people I've met like to talk about what happened in my experience, so there's no taboo. And I can't understand the hype about sparkling water either. I love plain old tap water, but everyone else prefers sparkling by a long shot.
The narrator is actually on Team Sparkling Water these days. I used to hate it, but then I accidentally bought bottles of sparkling water enough times that I forced myself to drink it, and then, I don't know, something clicked. Now I find it way more refreshing. Something about it perks me up. Living in Europe does strange things to a person. Oh, and here's another answer about the war thing. I'm from West Germany. My grandmother was a child during the war, so from here we only got funny little stories like the GIs giving out chocolate, or during bombing nights when they fled into the woods and she'd rather pack a box full of cookies than clothes. My great-uncle was more or less a child soldier and didn't want to talk about it. Ever. My partner is from East Germany. Most people under 40 are just happy the country collapsed and that we're one country again. As ages go up, you'll find more and more people telling you that everything was easier and better back when East Germany existed. Mostly the ones with that opinion couldn't keep up with modern technology and made themselves useless on the job market.
I'm learning German since 2 months just because a friend said I couldn't. But is the trouble worth it?
Our grammar is really hard, so I applaud you for trying. It's totally possible to learn it well enough to hold a conversation in that time frame, I'd say, but it's kind of hard. Good luck.
This is about food. Do you know what stirrum is? My grandfather used to make it for breakfast, and he had to learn to make it while in Germany during World War II from an SS officer.
Okay, I'm a German and I had to Google what it is. It seems like we just have a different name for it, which is Kaiserschmarrn. A scrambled pancake, basically.
How many Germans actually go to Oktoberfest?
I think most German people think it's overcrowded and overrated, so I'd say mostly tourists visit.
Wo befindet sich die Bibliothek?
Dritter Stock, 5. Tür links.
What are your favorite 3 dishes your Mutter or Oma made?
Königsberger Klopse, or meatballs simmered in a lightly tangy caper cream and broth sauce with potatoes. Kaiserschmarrn, or mashed up pancakes, it's amazing with some fruit. And the typical Sonntagsessen, Sunday dinner, with Spätzle, Knödel, Braten and sauerkraut are amongst my favorite, I'd say. I am an avid weightlifter, and I admire your country's value of strength and fitness. Is powerlifting and fitness as big and valued in your country as I've researched? I've learned a lot from German weightlifting methods. In my circle of friends, fitness is often discussed and we go to the gym a lot, so it's pretty big, I'd say.
What do you think of the movie Jojo Rabbit, a comedy about World War II from the perspective of a 10-year-old indoctrinated youth?
I thought it was very funny and I had a great time watching it. Its more tragic elements do a good job of not trivializing the issue, especially when focusing on Jewish issues, which are more within the writer's expertise. On the other hand, I think we are used to harder, more in-depth satire of the Third Reich over here, so that part was actually pretty tame. Sprichst du Deutsch? Ja. What would you classify as German comfort food? Like in America we have fried chicken and macaroni and cheese. Something you make for the family and will absolutely warrant about 3 to 5 slaps on the table from its goodness, but not something that could be eaten every day. Spätzle or egg noodles with creamy sauce, cheese and caramelized onions, rouladen, think slices of beef that are rolled and filled with mustard, onions and pickles, knödel, like dumplings, and Kartoffelpuffer, similar to hash browns I think. Those are amongst my favorite comfort foods. Not really a question, but last year I went to Trier on a Sunday. The city was basically closed except for the Port Nigra and the McDonald's. Just beyond the Karl Marx statue, there was a little side road. No cars, no nothing coming at all, from any direction. Little old German Oma was there waiting for the light to turn green, patiently watching the light. Definitely a, yep, I'm in Germany moment. Also, Trier has a place called the Booty Club, and now that I Google it, it's closed forever and it's heartbreaking. Wait, I could ask any question I want? Oh god, and now I can't think of anything. I had a bunch of things I wanted to ask before, and now I can't remember. How's your day going? Oh, pretty great. How about you? Serious question. What do Germans think of their country's past events? Is it just a part of history you try to forget, or do people actually feel ashamed? Are the events taught in schools, and to what degree? It's a big part of our schools, and it's our job to make sure nothing like that ever happens again. It's taught extensively in school, and most students visit a KZ with their school at one point. What speed do you actually go on at that one stretch of the Autobahn that doesn't have a speed limit? All of the lanes on the Autobahn don't have a speed limit, but there's a rule that you can't pass someone on the right, meaning you can't drive faster on the right lane than someone on the left. That means the far left lane is the fastest and people drive anywhere from 130 km per hour to however fast their cars can go. Why are your beers and sausages so much better? Long history of making them, I guess. I'll go to the local German cultural center for their Oktoberfest, and when I get food, a quarter of the plate is sauerkraut. What's the proper way to eat it? Straight up or combined with a bit of Wurst? The only other way I've seen it used is on hot dogs at a baseball park. When I was 4, my sister and I painted some rocks real pretty-like and tried to sell them. Not one of you Germans bought them. Why didn't you buy the pretty painted rocks that us weird little English kids were trying to sell you? Well, you probably tried selling them without a merchant's license, or at least the Kleingewerbeanmeldung. We are not supporting the black market here. Why did Germans eat French fries with mayo instead of ketchup? Wait, other people don't do that? It's just the way we eat fries. Everyone does that over here. If I wanted to travel to Germany, what's the best city or town or national park to visit outside of Berlin? Leipzig is kind of close to Berlin, and depending on what you're looking for, it's really worth your time. He had me, until this happened. Top 10 ways that guys blew their shot with women. Well, the first red flag was how antsy he was to get me on the phone. This was a friend of a friend on Facebook, by the way. He was so antsy that I almost didn't call him. The deal breaker for me was something along the lines of, well, you're not like most women. You actually understand the complex subjects I like to talk about. Most women are too vapid and dull to compete with my intellect. Click. Down went the receiver. Barf. Gentlemen, if you have to state you're above average in intellect, you aren't. Mine told me I'd look like I was 13, if not for the wrinkles. Managed to insult me for looking too young and too old at the same time. I was 24 for reference. When I looked offended, he said, "Oh, don't worry, I like that you kinda look like you're 13. One time this guy got my number while I was at work because he said he was new to the area and we had interests in common. He immediately started texting me about how he knew I'd be a great girlfriend and how he couldn't wait for me to meet his family. He knew that I walked to work because he had seen me, and one day he texted me something like, "I can't believe you haven't been a victim of the unspeakable act yet? Your dad must have really protected you." I had to very firmly tell him that I wasn't interested, and luckily he never tried to bother me at work or anything ever again. After actively avoiding contact with me for 3 months, he sent me a crotch pic at what was 4 a.m. his time, Wednesday morning. When I reacted poorly to waking up to this lovely image, he called me repeatedly throughout the day until I picked up, at which point he told me that he loved me, quote, in the Tolkienian sense. When I told him to F off, he sent more pics of his Johnson. I went out once with someone who bought a pair of glasses to our first date and asked if I could wear them for the entirety of our relationship. He already knew I didn't wear glasses, so he'd gone ahead and put in fake lenses for me. When I asked why, he said it was because he always imagined himself marrying someone who wore glasses. Also, he told me that he found those glasses on the floor at the movie theater. Lucky me. This is far and away from being one of the most awful ones, and believe me, we're gonna see some shockers today, but I wager that this is going to be the weirdest one that we read. So strange. I don't even feel hostile about this guy, I just want to know if he's okay. Also, this video is going to be a little one-sided. Tomorrow we'll release a video on ways that girls blew their chances with guys. I was friends with a guy from work that I kind of liked. After we hung out with some other friends, he walked me to my car. I had to leave to get home for curfew, and he leaned on the car door and wouldn't let me leave and told me I was lying about having a curfew. I was really creeped out. He kept wanting me to kiss him, while he basically wouldn't let me get in my car. I told him we shouldn't, because if we weren't sure we were going to date, it would make our friendship weird. Later, he told me I was right about not kissing because I wasn't emotionally mature enough to handle a relationship. Whew, dodged a bullet there. We're talking one of those big Mario bullets that takes up half the entire screen. I met a guy at a wing restaurant after I got off from work. The majority of the time we were there, he talked about his ex-wife. After he finished eating, he asked if I wanted to get frozen custard or see a movie. I told him I'd rather watch a movie, my dietary restrictions, and since I didn't know the area well, I'd follow him to the theater in my own car. Instead of driving to the theater, he drove to the custard place. He didn't even mention the movie again. He just ordered himself a big custard. This actually made me laugh, like, what the frick? That's so weird. My theory is that his first date with his ex-wife was the same wing restaurant and she wanted to go to a movie, and he caved even though he really wanted custard. Now he's seeing what happens in the branching storyline if he decides, oh, screw it, I want custard now. Very nice and seemingly normal, if not slightly awkward guy decided to give me a t-shirt with his face on it after the first date. Tried negging me at the start of the date, then threw a tantrum when I refused to do the deed with him. He actually said I owed him bedroom favors because he paid for my movie ticket. Dude, I don't think you could get action from a working girl for the price of a movie ticket. He was a co-worker of mine at a restaurant. He was about 10 years older than me, and I knew that he was interested, but I wasn't too sure. He seemed nice though, so I was thinking about it, but something seemed off. I ended up at a mutual friend's party a while later, and he was there. I wasn't drinking and decided to leave early. He had been drinking and decided to follow me through the dark to my car. He called out my name as I got to my car, so I turned around and he started demanding I give him a chance and go out with him. I apologized and said I didn't think it was a good idea, and he got upset. He started yelling, saying I'd been a tease and leading him on, and then just kept yelling, "Just go out with me, just say yes," over and over as he grabbed my shoulders and slammed me into the side of my car. He held me there, pinned against my car, and kept screaming in my face. He was about 6'2", and I'm 5'3". I started to cry and told him he was scaring me. He took a step back and I got into my car as fast as I could, locked the door, and got the F out of there. Well, this one guy blew it when he said it would be my fault if he ended himself, and then spammed me photos of himself with a rope around his neck. He was sitting down on the couch and just had the rope kind of draped around his neck. I told him I wasn't responsible for any decisions he made for himself, and then I blocked him. Well, this one guy who attacked a pigeon. We were acquainted with each other through work and it was the first date. We were in the park, walking along, talking, everything's normal up until then. Suddenly, one of the many pigeons walking around the fountain wandered near us. The guy stops what he's saying mid-sentence and takes a running kick at the pigeon. The pigeon was too fast for him and took off, landing just a couple of feet away. The guy takes it personally, I guess, and goes running after the pigeon. Again, repeatedly trying to kick it. Finally, the pigeon ends the standoff by flying up to a tree. The guy takes off his shoe and throws it at the pigeon, who's now feeling confident in his tree. The shoe misses, so the guy picks up his shoe, puts it back on, and starts walking back to me, sulking and swearing under his breath as he half-heartedly kicks at any pigeon near him. All of this happened in a matter of minutes. When he'd first kicked at the pigeon, I'd said something like, "Oh, leave him alone, what are you doing?" But after the full-on pigeon brawl, I was just standing there slack-jawed in shock. When he came back to me, he was panting, wiping sweat from his forehead, but acted like nothing had happened. He started talking about where we should have lunch. I finally said, "What the frick was that?" He looked at me like he was really confused. "What? The thing with the pigeon?" He just shrugged. "I don't like pigeons." Just to answer a couple of questions I'm getting. 1. No, I never found out why the pigeon ate. He didn't really see that his behavior was that out of the ordinary, and at the office he seemed very normal. At most, he was a little hyper now and then, but that was about it. 2. He had just turned 32. We had a party for him at the office a couple of weeks before this incident. 3. Last I heard, and this was a few years ago, he was living in Michigan. All you Michigan pigeons, beware. And 4. I saw the Friends episode a few years after this happened, and I forever relate to Phoebe because of it. He took me to McDonald's. That wasn't the problem, though. It was the way he acted like a butthead to the cashier. He also stopped by his mum's apartment to have a loud argument with her and his sister, so that was awkward. There was another one who turned out to be a huge racist. And there was a guy I met at a bar who told me his plans to get rich by adding music to websites. There's one guy who clearly thought that being witty requires making fun of every person in his life. A boyfriend of a few days told me that I should start gymnastics again after telling him that I used to. I asked why, and he responded with, well, it'll help you lose weight. I was 110 pounds. Losing 200 pounds or whatever of deadweight boyfriend was definitely the easier way to go. This one guy showed up 40 minutes late, wouldn't get off his phone, and only grunted at me instead of talking, and then called me a fat, ugly American B-word when I said I wasn't interested. Another guy stood me up the first time, and then when he did show up, he looked nothing like his picture. He was rude to the waitstaff and kept talking to me about a show I'd said I'd never seen. He said he'd pay since he stood me up before, but then complained that my waffle was expensive. It was $6 compared to his $10 entree. And then for the big finale, he tried to take me to Walmart. Does this count as one of the famous people of Walmart? I know it's technically not an encounter in a Walmart, but he seems to frequent it, and I could totally see this guy getting into a fight over a mobility scooter trolley that he doesn't even need to use based on the rest of his behavior. Mine just straight up said to me, I'm just an alpha, you know? A lot of people can't handle that. Ew. He talked so much about himself, I barely got any time to say anything. So it ended up with me just saying, oh, yeah, cool, and him not asking a single question about me. That guy really just took himself out on a date. Probably effed himself that night as well. Yeah, happened to me once too. Anytime I was able to say something about myself, he had done that too, but better. He was a friend of a friend. The first thing he says when he meets me is, look, I know this'll make you uncomfortable, but you just have the best frickin' chest out there. This was before a hello or anything, just straight to the point. You should have said, thanks, yours are very nice too. I'm an older single lady. Telling me how you really don't like or wanted your kids and that your ex is crazy is really not helping your case. Oh, I had one of those too. He sat there and told me how ugly his ex was and how she was crazy and turned his daughter against him and how she got super fat. I'm a big girl, you see, and he was not a small guy. And then he told me that he felt sorry for his daughter because she looked just like his ex. I said, wait, did you just call your daughter ugly? He giggled and said, yeah. What the frick? That was after he told me how he lived on his last girlfriend's couch for a couple of weeks after they broke up and was already looking for a new girlfriend on a dating site. His friends called him half an hour in, bugging him to go to the bar, and I told him he should go and have fun. Cause it's super flattering when you're on a frickin' date and he chooses to leave with his friends cause it's Friday, and that's what they do on Fridays. Not that I wanted him to stay, it was just one more nail in the coffin. He called every day for a week after that, and I just slowly backed away. Real peach, that guy. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. Don't forget to subscribe to Am I the Genius? He was an acquaintance and I'd known him for a year or so. Went on a date and he jokingly put his hands around my neck and shook it back and forth, and then told me that he'd had like 16 girlfriends but had never dated anyone longer than 6 months. He told me that if he wanted to, he could commit the unspeakable act on me, and then he asked me how I'd respond. I said by calling the cops on him, and he said, that would ruin my life and scar me forever. I have never noped out of a situation so fast in my life. Guy that was interested in me at one point was on, off again with this other girl, and he kept trying to get me to have dinner with him and hang out or whatever under the guise that he was going to break up with her soon and, quote, she doesn't need to know. How about no? On our first date, he picked me up with his baby in the back seat and an open beer in the cup holder. What kind of Ricky Bobby crap is this? By faking an Irish accent. This guy literally spoke on the phone for ages while faking an Irish accent. I met up with him at a gig and he spoke in an Irish accent the whole time. I genuinely believed he was Irish up until a friend of his told me that he was putting it on the whole time. I mean, this was in England, but just why? I dated a girl like this. She'd speak normally, usually, but when we went to the bar, she started speaking in a poor Irish accent because, "Oh, I'm Irish and my Irish side comes out when I drink." She's lived in the US her whole life. Poor girl. He stood outside the window of my dorm room at 3 a.m. yelling and doing karate moves on the dumpster. So yeah, the guy fought a dumpster for me. He attempted to slay the mightiest beast he could find in order to display his prowess and impress me. How romantic. We were chatting and he seemed cool before he said, "I'm basically the real-life version of BoJack Horseman." He then couldn't comprehend why that's not an attractive comparison, even after boasting that he's seen the whole series 4 times. Oh my god. If they say, my role models include Rick Sanchez, Eric Cartman, Sterling Archer, and Beavis and Butthead. Those guys are just so cool. You know things are bad when Sterling is the best person out of the bunch. He bit me. I was talking to him at a bar, because his friend was my friend, and he seemed cute and nice. But then he started running his fingers through my hair and moving closer even when I backed away. I told him repeatedly to stop touching me and that it would turn me off if he kept coming on so strong. His friend noticed and also told him to back off, and his response to all that was to bite me. And he was still confused when he tried to follow me home and I told him he wouldn't be spending the night with me. He made several racist comments about his co-workers. I called him out. He said he couldn't be racist because he's a feminist who loves women. Another one complained about Vietnamese restaurants hiring Vietnamese people and how it ruined the atmosphere to hear them, quote, exist. This one guy totally lost me on a date in college when he started talking about being on the basketball team and his social influence. Also, the money he somehow made being on the team, how much the girls loved him. Ego for days, for no reason, is a deal breaker. I was chatting with this guy I had on my Snapchat. I hadn't really given him a chance as I wasn't really attracted to him. Once I started to talk to him more and more, I decided that I'd take his offer to go on a date. He was always such a gentleman and so sweet I figured we'd have a fun night. So later that evening, I go to open up my Snapchat and there it is, a frickin' pic of his crotch. So I text back, "Hey, I'm gonna have to cancel our date." I've told him so many times that it's such a disappointment when you find a great guy and make a date with them, and then they shove an eggplant in your face. Like they've asked you on a date and you've accepted and they automatically think, oh well, they want to see it. I haven't talked to him since then. He told me he was more than 250 years old and that he was a werewolf. I laughed it off as I thought he couldn't possibly be serious. He didn't think it was that funny. Ghosting me and then turning up again weeks later to see if I was still interested, when he was clearly just using that time to follow up with someone he actually liked more than me. But then he got dumped. I don't think every relationship requires an explicit breakup. If we've only been out a few times and you're not interested, not getting back to me gets the message across loud and clear. But keep in mind, doing it that way can burn the bridge. He told me he was really strong and that if he wanted to, he could probably beat me to death pretty easily. But never would because he wouldn't hit a girl because he was a nice guy. What is with all the guys trying to impress on women that they could ruin or end their lives? Is it just a genuinely clueless explanation of your strength that you think you'll impress someone with? Or is it an actual calculated threat? God, I really have to hope that at least in some cases it's the former. This was a New Year's Day party in 2015 in my home state, which I was visiting for the holidays. It was hosted by 2 of my friends, who are seriously this gay power couple and heavily involved in LGBTQ issues in the state. They also love hosting extravagant parties at their home, and this time had thrown both a New Year's Eve and a New Year's Day party. I only say this to point out that the guest list at the party was mostly older gay men, like 50s and up, and then girls around my age. Let's say mid-20s at the time. This one guy, let's call him William, I honestly don't remember his name because in my mind he's always been a cheeseball guy, shows up a few hours in. He was cute and really well dressed and we hit it off really quickly and spent the entire rest of the party together. To address a number of the questions I'm getting, I didn't see him drink anything non-alcoholic all night, and I'd be genuinely surprised if substances were involved. And of course I could be wrong, but I also just don't think it was the kind of party where someone would have spiked drinks. And again, this guy was with me the entire time. Anyway, it gets late and it's just me, William, and our hosts left. He and I still hung out for a bit, but it was clear the hosts were getting really tired. Now, the entire night I'd had a lot of fun hanging out with William, and ordinarily wouldn't have doubted for a second he was into me. But given how 98% of the men at this party were gay, I wasn't sure. I became more sure when host number 1 looked like he was literally about to pass out, and William was trying to get us to start a movie. So seeing that we were definitely about to wear out our welcome, I offered to give William a ride home, since he'd taken an Uber over here. Our hosts gifted him with a giant tub of cheese balls as a parting gift, which will be important later. So I was driving him back and everything seemed normal until I pulled into his driveway. We continued chatting for a bit, but then it starts getting a bit uncomfortable for me. He was using the "you just don't realize how beautiful you are" lines, which, I mean, I have insecurities as much as the next girl, but I'm actually pretty sure I'm reasonably attractive. But how do you really respond to that sort of comment? He then starts asking me about my family, and when I said I was closer to my mum than my dad, he wanted to dig deeper and analyze my relationship with my father. By this point, I was definitely starting to become less enamored with the guy and was ready to get home. But then he starts crying about how beautiful and perfect I was, and how it was so unfair that he had met me now when we'd never have a chance since I lived out of state. He'd never met anyone like me before, and he knew he never would again, and how could life be so cruel? How could he go on knowing such perfection existed, and it was just out of reach? Now again, this is where if I were in the situation now, I would have handled it differently. But I wanted to be nice, so I tried to console him. I patted his shoulder and held his hand. I pointed out that I lived less than 2 hours away, so it wasn't like I was on the other side of the country. That got me a few sniffles. I told him we could text, and he nodded tearfully as we exchanged numbers, but then got overwhelmed again. I made some moves to kiss him. Again, not my proudest moment, but I was feeling desperate, and it wouldn't be the first time I'd kissed someone to avoid talking to them. And he actually refused, because that would make it worse. To kiss me and know what that felt like and never have it again. We continued this song and dance for a couple of hours. He'd give me increasingly effusive compliments and then cry about how I could never be his. I'd try to console him and he'd seem to get a bit better, pick up his tub of cheese balls and go to leave, and then he'd sink back into his seat and fall back into the depths of despair. Over and over and over again. Every time I thought I finally had a victory, the tears would just start up again. And we got so close. 1 or 2 of these times, he even got out of the car, and then he'd shake his head and get back in. He did offer me some cheese balls every so often, but I was pretty put off by them at the moment. Finally, at around 3 a.m., I told him I just really needed to go home because it was really late. I guess reality was finally starting to sink in, and he agreed. And then he tried to get me inside to hook up. Boy, I gave you that opportunity 2 hours ago and you said it would be too painful for you to experience such perfection. You do not get to get it now. I just told him no, it was late and I needed to get home. He still tried pleading his case a few more times, but at this point I wasn't in the consoling mood anymore. Said goodbye and that was that. Except it wasn't, because then I went to turn my car on. I'd been turning it off and on since I didn't want to keep it running for 2 hours in the driveway, but also it was January, and my car wouldn't start. That's really when I started panicking, because we were in the burbs and it was 3 a.m. in January. Nobody was just casually walking around. There were no houses that had their lights on. All I could think was, oh my god, I'm going to have to knock on his door for help and I just got rid of him. I'm going to be stuck with this guy forever. He's going to view this as some kind of sign that destiny wants us together and he's going to cry again and I'm never going to go home. I called my parents. Thanks Mom and Dad for being so kind, and they seemed a bit confused but they offered to come out and help. But then while I was on the phone with them, my car miraculously kicked back to life long enough for me to drive the 2 miles back home before AAA came out in the morning to change the battery. And that's the story of me and Cheeseball Guy. Alas, it was never meant to be. Men spill the shocking reasons they turned down hot girls. Because she'd only create more problems than I already had. I was in your place once. We made the right choice. Well, she may have been hot, but her soul was a garbage can where all things went to die. Because being pretty can only get you so far. Personalities are what keeps it going. Because I was into the slightly less pretty girl who I was also friends with and who actually seemed to care about me other than for physical reasons. She didn't believe in the atrocities of the Third Reich. It's a shame, she was mad cute too. I accidentally turned down a girl I had a massive crush on in middle school. I'd convinced myself that she was the one I was going to end up with and to marry. Turns out she actually liked me back, and her brother would literally walk past me at school and yell, "Hey, my sister likes you!" But I just assumed he was trolling me or something. Well, one day we were on the train home after school and her friends suddenly and mysteriously disappeared to another carriage, leaving her and I alone together. She asked, "Hey, I was wondering, do you have a crush on me?" as she leaned in hopefully for my answer. And how did I react to this situation? Well, I started rummaging through my school backpack pretending I was looking for something and changed the subject to some dumb thing that my brother did on the weekend. She leaned back in her seat and looked visibly disappointed. Now, why did I do this, you ask? Well, I'd heard the statistics of how unlikely relationships were to last if they started at our age, so I told myself that we weren't ready yet. My plan was to wait 5 more years until after we'd left school before I made my move, because then it would last, I told myself. Of course, I waited so long that she eventually lost interest and we drifted away. Yeah, teenage me had some strange ideas about love and relationships. When I was in high school, my best friend was a girl who I had a massive crush on and who clearly had one on me as well. But teenage me was the type to have a new girlfriend every couple of months, and I didn't want to turn my best friend into another ex-girlfriend. We're 30 now, we've been dating for a year and a half, and plan on getting married next year. Well, it's early in the video and I'm already surprised by this angle that I didn't see coming. Turning away gorgeous girls not because of their monster personalities, but because your brains couldn't deal with the possibility of things being different than they imagined. Interesting. Because the first words out of her mouth were, "Oh, I smell angel dust on you." I was in fact not carrying at the time. In college, I didn't make a move on a former homecoming queen who is now a Broadway actress despite her putting overt moves on me first. I'd like to say it's because I had my eyes set on the quirky, artistic girl instead. And it's true, I did choose to date that quirky art girl right afterwards, but that wasn't the main reason. I'd like to say it was because I found out the only reason she put the moves on me at all was because I'm a dead ringer for her ex-boyfriend. That was true as well, but also not the main reason I said no. The reason I didn't reciprocate her moves was because I was just a complete chicken and terrified, and she was and is still so far out of my league that I'd need an Amtrak ticket to get within a point. Sometimes it is like that. I'd like the record to show that she is a delightful person, and the whole "I look like her ex" angle, while a bit weird, wasn't really an indication of anything beyond her having a type, I suspect. Now she's with this totally cut actor dude. I'm not a totally cut actor dude. I have a belly and tattoos and a mustache. Your job is not all that hard. All you do is carry food. I apologized to the waitress, paid, and left my date there. I don't even care about the embarrassment she caused by being so loud. My thinking was that if she does this to one person, she does it to everyone. Last thing I need in my life is toxicity. I had a huge crush on this girl in high school. Tried hanging out with her for close to a year, always hoping that she'd see me as something more than just a friend. And when that didn't really work out, I decided to just go for it and ask her to prom. She didn't say yes right away, but she did say yes eventually. I quickly figured out that she was going to prom because she was excited to go to prom, not because she wanted to go with me. I sort of lost interest after that, and I started dating another girl. Interestingly enough, it was a girl that I danced with on that prom who told me that while we were dancing that she really liked me. Her and I dated for a while and had a lot of fun. The other girl, the one that I'd started off with a big crush on and took to prom, got back in touch with me after I broke up with that actual girlfriend. Apparently she was kind of jealous that I was dating another girl and not giving her attention anymore. She started calling me all the time again and wanted to possibly start dating, but I'd already gotten over her, so nothing happened. When I was in high school, one of the hottest girls jumped into my arms, kissed me, and asked me to be her boyfriend. I thought that was a joke and I said no. I rejected her because I was an oblivious idiot. To all of the teens that might be reading this, shoot your shot. If a girl or boy you like is paying attention to you and you catch a vibe, stop thinking and just go for it. I grew up in a summer resort town, and a girl my age would spend summers at a cottage in my neighborhood. She always had a boyfriend, like since she was about 12, because she was an absolutely beautiful girl. We got along well in our teens and into college, but I wouldn't say we had a flirty friendship or anything like that. I just always sort of felt like she was out of my league, and also me and my brothers were good friends with her other siblings and cousins. The summer before my senior year in college, in the mid-90s, her and I met up for drinks with a few other people from our neighborhood. She casually mentions that she's broken up with her boyfriend a few weeks before, but I didn't think anything of that. I noticed she kept cozying up to me and eventually asked me to walk her home. We made out and she told me that she always liked me, and then we started dating just before going back to college. After like 3 times together, I realized that I'd never really been alone with her and that she had the personality of an 8-year-old. Constant baby talk, and she only watched cartoons and the Disney Channel. She was incredibly awkward around my adult friends, like non-functional in conversations. We had absolutely no common interests whatsoever. We couldn't even go to the movies together because she had trouble with anything above a PG rating. We ended up dating for about 5 months, but I just couldn't take it anymore. Some of my friends still give me a hard time for dumping the hottest girl I've ever seen, but we all have our limits, I suppose. In short, ended up dating a lifelong crush in my early 20s, and it felt a lot like babysitting, so I dumped her. Never meet your heroes. Well, I turned her down because I figured my husband would probably disapprove. Another pretty girl beat her to it by several years, and that first pretty girl became my wife. Well, I've dated a few gorgeous women in the past. Some lacked the personality, the rest verged on psychosis, literally picking fights if I talked to another female kind of gals. After a few of those, I quit dating. Done. No hookups, no blind dates, nothing. And then I met my wife. I was instantly, overwhelmingly attracted to her, and I was terrified of how I felt about her. I spent the first year waiting for the other shoe to drop, and long story short, we've been together 10 years, married for 8.5. She's my better half, my best friend, and just the right amount of crazy to compliment me. She's perfect. Guys, I took this topic because I felt like maybe it would be a bit of a rebuff after taking one where women talk about some of the worst guys to ask them out on a date, but all of you are out there humble bragging about the choices you made in your eventual life partners, or even worse, being thankful for what you have. Absolutely disgusting behavior. Take your hot, delightful partners and get out of my sight. I'm going to go with the opposite of everyone else here. She was perfect. Beautiful, fun, funny, loving, interesting, motivated, supportive, successful. Maybe not perfect, but her imperfections made her even more lovable. How obsessive she'd get over little things, her temper when defending me, her stubbornness in switching our meals at a restaurant if mine looked better. She taught me that even a 10 out of 10 woman is still a human being with all of the same insecurities and idiosyncrasies as everyone else. It wasn't her that was the problem. It was me. The problem is that I learned that relationships just aren't for me. I had everything you could ask for, and no matter how much I lied to myself and tried to adapt and change and fit the mold, I just couldn't be happy. Not because she was asking me to, or wanted me to, or forcing me to, far from it, but because I was struggling to give her what she deserved. I was so unhappy and more miserable by the day. The breaking point was when I realized I was changing her. She was adapting to suit me and becoming someone who wasn't happy either, and changing into someone she wasn't. And I realized that that wasn't fair. She deserved better. I also realized this was a streak with me. All the girls I'd see and date would come back to this point for me. And when I finally accepted the idea that I don't ever want to be married or have kids, it felt like a huge rock lifted off my chest and I could finally breathe. My future feels like a blue sky mountain air, free and bright. I know society teaches you that being single means you're a loser, and that love and togetherness are where the heartbeat of life is, and that loneliness is normal. But I've stopped accepting that bullcrap as the only way to be happy or fulfilled or successful. I never feel lonely, ever. I have lots of relationships with friends and family, and I have more than enough love to go around. And more than I deserve, frankly. And I feel like I've succeeded because I have what so few get. I understand what makes me happy. I think she's moved on now, and instead of being jealous or upset, I couldn't be happier for her. Because I loved that girl and I want her to be happy, and I'm happy she's in a relationship that accepts her as she is and fulfills her needs. And I love being single. I feel like I'm so fortunate to be a person who's perfectly happy in his own company and never tires of it, and I don't think I ever will. Let me tell you about the girl I dated before I met my wife. We dated for 2 years. She was smoking hot and we had some similar interests, so it kind of clicked. She loved me. She wanted to be with me all of the time. She wanted to keep other people away from me. I slowly drifted away from my circle of friends as she preferred to stay in rather than go out. For reasons I'll never understand, she was constantly worried that my best friend's girlfriends were interested in me. And they weren't, believe me. She thought my male friends were shallow. So over time, my wide circle of friends became a dot of only her. She did not like my family at all. She thought they were always judging her and somehow scheming various things secretly behind her back. They were not. In the end, I chose my friends and family over her, because they're a part of who I am, and if she couldn't accept them, how could she love the person I really am? You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. Don't forget to subscribe to Am I the Genius? Oh, I was at a party and a couple of my friends were trying to hook me up with a newly divorced friend of theirs. We were hanging out, chatting, and just getting along well. Even my friend would walk by and make a thumbs up. Then she started talking about how she didn't get her kid vaccinated, because a lot of people didn't realize how bad they were, and humans have lived for centuries without vaccines. I noped the F out of that conversation and I never looked back. I dated a gorgeous, perfect 10 kind of girl for a few months and then broke it off. The problem was that she had no personality and no sense of humor. I'm afraid she might not have been very smart. Either that or she believed that the man should take control of every situation and make every decision. It got very frustrating having conversations like, where do you want to eat? I don't care. Wherever you pick is fine. What should we do this weekend? Oh, whatever you want to do is okay with me. What kind of music do you like? Oh, I'm not picky. She'd laugh at all of my jokes, but I don't think she got any of them. She'd laugh the same laugh every single time, no matter what kind of joke it was. And I know some of my jokes were funny, damn it. And she was a cold fish in the bedroom. She never showed any preference for anything in particular. I had to make all of the moves. Every single time. And she'd just kind of lie there. That made me second guess myself. Is it me? Am I missing something? I think I know what I'm doing. My partners have always had fun before. So I eventually broke it off. It was just no fun anymore. Yes, she was very beautiful, but she was boring. Or maybe it was me. Maybe I was wrong for her, but I could never find out if she was happy or not. So I just gave up. My friends thought I was insane for breaking it off with her. I didn't go into any details why, because I didn't want to talk badly about her. So I just said it didn't work out and left it at that. When I broke up with her, she smiled the same smile she always smiled and said, okay. And that was that. I found out months later from one of her girlfriends that she was heartbroken over it. Heartbroken. I wanted to bash my head into a wall. How was I supposed to know she even cared? She never showed any emotion or anything. I felt terrible about breaking her heart, but she never gave me a single clue that she cared about anything. You've got to give me something to work with. Communication is important, kids. Oof. I have had brief relationships like this. Even if the person is beautiful and perfectly nice, you do really need some sort of spark of personality or direction or agency. Knowing what makes them happy and being able to do that and seeing how they react, and seeing what they do for you and the people they care about. It's actually a wonderful thing, and I wouldn't want to go back to a relationship without it. I really hope this person got better at advocating for herself and she worked on whatever pain was preventing her from doing so, because she doesn't seem like a bad person and she deserves to be happy. Ooh, I've rejected many hot girls. Tinder is a maelstrom of crazy crap for sure. It blows my mind at how many people seem to outright expect me to have low self-esteem. If I get the sense that they feel they're doing me a favor by simply being there isn't going to be a second date. If you're rude to waitstaff, there isn't going to be a second date. If you have the personality of a wet turkey sandwich, there is not going to be a second date. If you're always on your phone, there isn't going to be a second date, and if you play hard to get, as soon as I pick up on it, I'm gone. The thing that bothers me most is that all of these games are so remarkably common, and it has me really discouraged that I'm ever going to find someone up to my standards, which aren't steep in my opinion. Whenever I tell them it isn't working out, I more often than not get something along the lines of, you're not cute enough to be this stuck up. I mean, I'm a guy, so yeah, I get it, rejection sucks, and I'll let them get a jab in to deal with it. But honey, I'm 30. I'm not looking for a hookup. Being pretty isn't enough anymore. I'm looking for someone to share a few more adventures with before I'm old. I want someone to put effort into it and actually take interest in my passions and goals. I want a partner, not someone that thinks they're a trophy. Dating is a nightmare. She was tapped. Despite being gorgeous, she was a frickin' psycho. A nice psycho sometimes where she'd do anything for me, but a psycho nonetheless. She misunderstood I like to read as I'm wealthy and tried asking for expensive things. I'm a man, not a wallet. I turned down this opportunity because she was so drunk that it would have been the unspeakable act. No thanks, and don't feel offended that I didn't want to in that circumstance. I didn't turn mine down. She told me during our bedroom times that she wanted to cheat on me with my best friend, and then she left and did just that. I lost 2 friends. Pretty doesn't mean anything. First date, she spent the entire time gossiping about a bunch of people, including a good friend of mine. During the course of one date, she went from the hottest girl in my mind to a slightly repulsive girl. I'm not sure if that counts as rejecting, but I avoided her like the plague after that. She certainly seemed into me, but I wasn't interested. Because I was too afraid to say yes when she asked me to dance. Just a pretty girl in a bar who saw me standing against the wall by myself and invited me onto the floor with her hips. Too nervous about looking like a fool dancing to accept. Stupid. But in the interim, I met my new wife, who's way hotter in my opinion, and we just had a baby, so things worked out okay. Being pretty is not everything. Not being a toxic B-word is more important. Her personality was rotten. My friends thought I was crazy that I didn't go there at least once, since I could have easily. But I was raised better than that. She gets taken advantage of enough from the rest of the world. I don't want to give her any hope. Shame how someone's childhood can destroy a person even if they're gorgeous. I'm a lesbian, and I've rejected pretty girls for the following reasons. She was straight but curious, and I'm just sick of that crap. She was bat crap crazy. She was shy. She wanted me to pretend that I was a bimbo, and that was an instant turn-off. Polyamory drama. She smoked, and I'm allergic. Too far outside my age range or didn't have anything in common, and my current partner is way better than any of them, and I don't feel the need for anyone extra. We were friends. I liked her, asked her out, got rejected. A year or so of puberty later, apparently I was now handsome and she asked me out. But in the interim, I'd figured out that she was lazy, moochy, all take and no give, and her family was way too religious. So I ended up shaking my head and saying, I don't think that's for the best. Flash forward 10 years, the most recent conversation I had with her, she tried to convince me to pay her $50 in exchange for going south of the border on me. Last I heard, she was having issues with substances. Mostly, it just makes me sad. We were complete opposites. I was a reserved person and she was an extrovert. I felt like I wouldn't value her choices. Well, in a way I did, but I never told her. Mind you, we were good friends. This was almost 11 years ago. The last girl before my wife, we broke up because I was a cuddler and she was not. Completely understandable, and there was no acrimony on either side. But physical contact is one of my love languages, and it's very important to me. Because she had a boyfriend. Also because of self-esteem. But mostly the boyfriend. You ever meet an extremely attractive person who is just an awful human being as a whole? That's why. After about 10 minutes of talking, you realize red flags are for your comrades, not your dates. She had too many horses. I had a thing for this girl for a long time. We had a lot of fun, we enjoyed each other's company, got along, and we were friends for a while before we got together. There was a period of time where we weren't around each other for about a year or so. We got together shortly after this period, and we started going out. We went on a date, and we were talking about things. She told me that during that year or so where we weren't around that she'd picked up smoking. I remember feeling so let down and disappointed. It was a major turn-off for me. I had a thing for her for 10 years at least. Some might think it's shallow, but smoking is just something I can't stand. I tried for a while to deal with it, but to me it was something that was constantly in my mind, and I couldn't get over. You know, it would have to be the match of a lifetime for me to be okay with a smoker. And for the life of me, I can't really explain why that would be just as much of a deal breaker for me as a horrible personality. I guess I just don't like the smell and taste. That and the looming prospect of early death and your partner being prone to horrible illnesses earlier on in life. She had no personality whatsoever. If you were trying to get to know her, she'd be immature and laugh off the question. And she was dull in texts and on dates. It was like I was talking to a brick wall. If a girl doesn't have a personality, don't date her, fellows. She was only with me because she couldn't get someone else. Great way to start the school year, am I right? I did end up rejecting someone who asked me out, and it was because on their Facebook, they had a photo of themselves in front of the Confederate flag. That immediately concerned me very much, and I couldn't say yes to someone who'd willingly do that. Have a nice day. Mind-numbingly stupid. I had to explain everything like she was in kindergarten. I was already spoken for, and she was dating my best friend. I didn't like her personality to begin with. I've turned down maybe a dozen pretty girls for one reason or another. Just because a girl's hot, it doesn't mean you throw your normal rules out the window for them. It could be for a lot of reasons, but mostly if my life is going to be worse off with her than without, like the stress of dealing with games or other bullcrap, then it's a no-brainer for me. I don't need to deal with more bullcrap in my life without getting paid for it. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all of the stories. And if you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot. Everything linked in the description.